Welcome and good morning, everyone, to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Issues and Updates on November 26, 2024. Administrator Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Welcome. All commissioners are present. We're going to shift the order of items slightly, and we're going to start with Board of County Commissioners items. First up, consent agenda requests for the Board of County Commissioners. First, Finance Department, item 1, approval of a lease amendment with Sportcraft Landing Incorporated for Clackamas County Sheriff's Office Boathouse Slip. Amendment value is $72,871.03 for 5 years. Total agreement value is $116,154.15 for 8 years. Funding is through budgeted county general funds. Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director. Jeff Jorgensen, Facilities Division Director. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director. Here to request a lease extension. This is a first or second amendment on this marine storage unit that we have. This is required for best keeping of our vehicle, our marine vehicle. It's held by the County Sheriff's Office, and it is an additional 5 years. So we request your consideration.
Additional 5 years for $72,000 extra, and it's budgeted item, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Is this a covered slip with electrical power included in this price?
Correct. Well, no, yes, it's a full slip. It's a 2-story boathouse. It actually has 4 slips underneath where they hold their boats or ski-doos, but they also do training up above. It's a full building. It's been there for several years.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So is this due to a price increase?
It was actually due to Oregon City, because of the construction underneath the bridge, the 205 Abernathy Bridge. Oregon City went back in and we had a lease amendment. One, reduced the amount of time, so we had to go back in a negotiation. Now this is lease amendment 2. The Sportcraft Landing owner has completed negotiations with Oregon City, so now they can come back in and it's actually access to his property that Oregon City owns, and they've given him access every 5 years. So we're going to have to go back every 5 years to go ahead and maintain and do a 5-year update.
Okay. If I could just follow, because we have not had the work session routine for a long time, in the past times we would have a work session. So I'm going to ask the question because it's been such a long time, and that is that, and there's more than one question here, but I'll take them one by one. There's the old boathouse that is over there off of, I forgot the name of that street there, on the opposite side of the highway.
You're talking about in the outlet, or the inlet?
Yeah.
In there?
Yeah.
There's actually 2 that are in there. One of them that's actually just becoming really dilapidated, and we're working with the Sheriff's Office to get that removed out. There's the other one that still is operational, but it really can't get into the inlet with the boats. So those are really almost null and void, but there is one that's fully operational, and that's just a boathouse. It really is a structure covered with a garage to drive a boat into.
Okay, so can we actually move a small watercraft in and out of there today?
It has a hard time during the year if it's low water or high water.
Right, it's got that rock gravel bar that's there naturally.
It's not actively being dredged out, so
and
that's
we're paying rent for that, right?
No, those are owned.
Okay.
In the inlet, we own those. The one out in the Willamette River is the one we're leasing the slip with the whole 3,000 square foot boathouse with 4 slips underneath.
And I think my last question on this topic is that are there any other, did we or did we not have a similar rent space at the one in Wilsonville, the boathouse?
We have an active lease for the Charbonneau boathouse. So it's a fairly large boathouse, but it's just a boathouse that we have up there. So we have it on the upper river and the lower river.
Now, don't we have an ownership aspect of that, or was that a neighboring property where we actually own the land, own the facility?
The Charbonneau is totally leased. It's not owned by us at all. There was one that was over in West Lynn that is effectively not being used. You don't get access to it anymore. They had some different ones. One's kind of gone away too.
Okay, I'll follow up offline on the other property I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl?
Yeah, and I just want to confirm that this $72,871 this is not coming out of the CCSO budget, is that correct?
It is.
Oh, it is? Okay, good, thank you.
All right, see no objections, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Transportation and Development, item 1, approval of a board order to allow Kindred LLC to repurchase a property parcel. Sale price is $1,548.68. Funding is through Kindred LLC. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. Nice to see all of you. We have a couple of items for you today. The first here essentially deals with our surplus property program, and we have a request to reacquire a piece of property that was deeded through tax foreclosure in 2024 to the county. We have Stephen Peak, who's an heir of the deceased owner, has executed an assignment of all rights and interests to the property to Kindred LLC, and Kindred LLC is requesting a buyback of that particular property. All of this is pursuant to ORS 275-180. So we've had discussions with the board in the executive session about this. There was an authorization. We're bringing forward the request before the board for consideration. Any questions?
Questions, comments, Commissioners? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of a supplemental project authorization with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the I-205 multi-user path alternatives development study. Total project cost is $1,220,169. Funding is through $1,094,857.64 of Metro Regional Flexible Funds Allocation and $125,311.36 of county road funds. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you so much. So the I-205 multi-use path is a 16.5-mile path that leads from Vancouver south into Clackamas County. We have a 1-mile gap in that particular path. So we've secured funding through the regional flex funds. Again, those regional flex funds have requirements that we apply for. They can't be used for other things. They have certain criteria. We looked at those criteria. Those criteria are the viable use of those funds is to look at an alternatives assessment for this 1-mile gap. What is a viable way to construct and connect this vital multi-use path that goes up and down the I-205 corridor? I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of a contract amendment with Opsys Architecture for design and construction administration services for the Concord Community Center, Oak Lodge Library, and Concord Park. The amendment value is $463,481 for 1 year. Total agreement value is $6,552,611 for 5 years. Funding is through $95,200 of budgeted county general funds and all the rest NCPRD general fund.
I like to lead in any discussion around these libraries to assure the Board of County Commissioners no additional funding is needed. This was all included in the original budget when those projects were considered for the development or for the library portion. But essentially, we have an amendment. This amendment is for design and construction services that will include not only the Concord Community Center, the Oak Lodge Library, but also the Concord Park. Essentially, there's specifications or more specificity on page 2. If you have questions, I'd be glad to answer them, but essentially they're design services to assist with the construction of the improvements the board has already authorized and approved.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, Dan, part of this $463K, according to your paperwork, is due to permit delays.
Yep.
Now, can you,
I'd be glad to.
and you say that this is budgeted, but can you explain why this amount of money is caused by delays in issuing permits? And that's by the city?
Well,
Is that-
it's by an appeal that took place of a Clackamas County land use decision. If you recall, they had to go through the particular land use process. They went through that process. They met all applicable criteria that the county had established per our zoning and development ordinance. County staff approved the particular application, and a local citizen appealed it. And so that appeal was a project delay that was unanticipated. And so essentially those dollars, there's a delay cost associated with that. There were, and those delays in that land use decision also trickled down through other permit delays. Most specifically, permits through Oak Lodge Water for the sanitary and sewer connections and the water connections. But all of that kind of compounded itself. But again, there's contingency and other monies within the contract that no additional funds are required.
Okay, thank you.
See no objections.
Item 4, approval of a change order with P&C Construction for completion of the Concord Park Playground, Southeast Concord Road improvements, project delays and permit design changes, contaminated soil, and community center renovations for the Oak Lodge Library and Concord Community Center property. Amendment value is $2,606,964 for 8 months. Total agreement value is $30,610,461.90 for 4 years. Funding is through Metro Local Share, Local Government Grant Program funds, NCPRD General Fund, System Development Charges, and $717,766.50 of budgeted county general funds.
I want to highlight again, there's no additional funding request here related to the libraries most specifically, but fundamentally what we've been doing is there's so many different parts and elements to this particular project. We're getting individual, these are amendments, but amendments to deal with construction of specific elements. So again, this amendment we're looking at today deals with the Concord Park Playground for construction, the Concord Road frontage improvements that requires conditions of approval. There were some delays that were associated with that because of the appeal from the citizen. There is soil remediation, et cetera. And these amendments will allow PNC to go forward and advance construction and deal with those various issues on the site. Again, highlighting the fact all those funds are budgeted, no additional funding is required.
Questions or comments?
I just have one.
Yes, go ahead.
And so, Dan, is this going to be, this 36 million seems to be a lot of money. Is this pretty much the end of costs on these projects? Or are we going to be seeing more of these price increases?
Well, they aren't price increase, they're price specific to components, if that makes sense. The majority of the costs that you're seeing here are those dollars specific to the construction of certain elements. I believe we've got all the elements for the most part.
Come on up. Do you need to come up?
Come forward,
Come on
Jason.
up. I'm just looking for a head nod, but I couldn't get it. I'm not sure. Let me introduce Jason Varga and his new
Okay.
cast.
Hi, Jason. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Jason Varga, project manager for the Oak Lodge Community Project. Dan is right. The last big thing, and part of what we approved with the OPSIS, is the design of some interior improvements to the community center. That will most likely be the last fairly large scope that we still work on. So I'm hoping in January we can bring that cost forward. It should be somewhere under $1 million, but that'll be the last major scope. And then we're obviously going to have, as things come up that are unforeseen, we'll have changes for that, but they shouldn't be. We've gotten through a lot of the big stuff.
So that's the last unique element to be bid?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't have any budget pressures
No.
due to
No.
costs on this? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no objections, thank you for
Thank you so
coming.
much. Thank you.
Item 5, approval of a personal services contract with PRR Incorporated for social marketing campaign to reduce distracted driving. Total agreement value is $269,953 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Transportation. No county general funds are involved.
I'm not even sure what I share anymore because the titles are so comprehensive. Yeah, we do campaigns. You're aware of that. We do targeted campaigns to ensure our safe streets around this Clackamas County. This one is targeted toward just distracted driving. We advertised the project in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules. September 3rd, we actually had 20 consultants respond to that RFP, and essentially we scored PRR as the highest responding proposer. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Go ahead.
And Dan, has this been an effective program? 'Cause this is not new,
Well, I mean,
and this is a lot of money.
it is. And what we do, I mean, so what do you consider effective? I mean, the discussion that we have is we have a Drive to Zero program, which has an intent and a hope to have 0 fatal crashes within Clackamas County. and we do everything that we can do to try to influence those elements that are associated with the fatalities that we see in the county. One of the biggest is distracted driving, and the distracted driving is texting, things of that nature. So the intent within these programs is to help educate people about the cause and effect of those.
And this money from the Oregon Department of Transportation is to be used specifically for this purpose?
Is targeted for that
Okay.
program. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no objections? Oh, Commissioner West, go ahead.
Good morning. How are you, Dan?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm good.
Excellent.
Do we ever measure the outcomes of, like, we know we do these certain interventions or measures, and then we know the outcomes? We've seen a reduction of deaths by motor vehicles by X amount, or do we check to see if these dollars need to be? Is there any opportunity to adjust the intervention to try to be more effective?
I mean, we adjust the intervention based off the group we're trying to engage with. I guess I'd have to go back to our traffic safety group and see. We do measure. And this is unfortunate is that I have to say this. We do measure fatalities within the county on an annual basis. I think we also do more micro-analysis of some of this engagement, but I'll have to talk to those folks and get some information back to you.
Have we seen an increase or decrease in overall fatalities due to motor vehicles in Clackamas County?
So keep in mind, the tracking that we do tracking beyond the roads that are under our control. We actually include roads in other jurisdictions. So we look at the totality of Clackamas County, number one. Number two, there's been a lot of influences on the fatality rates. And I can tell you that there have been fluctuations in that annual basis. For example, during the pandemic, we actually saw an increase. You saw a lot of increased speed, increased distracted driving, people wanting to get out. I mean, driver error is, I believe this to be the case, but driver error is the single biggest issue that we have associated with distracted driving. So that's why you see improvements to like our road designs to try to make them safer for anybody who's traveling on them at various speeds. And also engagement through this to educate people about what the cause and effect of distracted driving might be. But I can talk to our folks to see if we can find some more data for you.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious to see, do we see an overall trend up or down? And I'd be curious to know in our fatal incidents, or I don't know if we track fatal or if we also track like somebody who's severely maimed, right? Is there substance abuse involved? What was the underlying cause of that would be interesting. So when we do these campaigns, if we know that we have an increased substance abuse issue, or there's increased drinking and driving, or if people are impaired for whatever reason, are we targeting to try to like mitigate those situations with those dollars? Or are we just kind of, sounds nice and the noodle sticks to the wall, and so let's do this with this money? I wonder like how tailored we can be to, of course, we all want less of these accidents. So.
Correct. As a reminder, we brought a program like that, kind of a post-incident engagement project to you that you authorized that we're advancing, which is getting kind of the specifics that you're looking for on not only one, it's assessing the root cause of some of these issues, number one, but it's also providing engagement when these fatalities occur on our road with wraparound services like to that family who may have lost somebody. But I'll get more information on that when we'll report back.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Dan.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, just to Commissioner West question. Regionally, and most of the media has been covering, and they're mixed together at times. So, sometimes it's about the traffic deaths in Portland, or it's about the region, and the numbers would lead us to believe that they're increasing. The fatalities are increasing. There's also accidents that are not fatalities that aren't getting the same amount of attention. I know that. I forgot what news channel recently did a piece, but it was also mentioned that, why is it going up? Why is it going up? With all these measures being taken place, right? They're, whether it's advertising like this, or whether it is slowing the speed limit down, or whether it's adding bike. And part of it is what was revealed in a news piece was that, okay, well, the city of Portland, the police department is no longer doing the patrols kind of services because of it's a priority thing. Mm-hmm. So now they're seeing an increase. There's also the other argument is that how much of this is people being diverted off of freeways because now people are back to work and everything's now plugged up. So people are diverting off the freeways and they're getting late. People are all usually distracted. I can tell you one of the police reports I read was I was late for work. I got off the freeway because it was a bumper to bumper, and I texted my boss that I was going to be late and didn't look at the road, and I got in an accident. So those are the kinds of things that are real. So I think, messaging is something that's typically done. ODOT, as you can read here, is the one who's paying this bill. They're doing a lot to try to increase their campaign in the guise of safety. So education, I think the thing that we can measure, hopefully, is utilization of actually projects that are built versus communication campaigns, right? And so I'll be pushing on the transportation side for how do we know that a particular infrastructure for safety was effective or not, or is it being used, for example, a crosswalk?
Yeah.
How many people are using it or how many people are not using it?
Right, and then
Something to come. It's
what
not
was the
very,
total investment to that?
it's not being looked
Yeah.
at right now, but I think metrics are important.
Yeah.
Sure. Anything else? See no objections. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, Health, Housing, Human Services. Item 1, approval of an amendment to the Revenue Intergovernmental Agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for tobacco prevention and education programs. Amendment value is $20,000 for 9 months. Total agreement value is $12,453,475.76 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Yes, this amendment is a housekeeping item. It increases the funding for the fiscal year 25 tobacco prevention and education program by $20,000.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, good morning, Rod.
Good morning.
This is 12 million plus for 2 years for tobacco prevention just in Clackamas County, right?
Yes.
We have 1/10 of the population of the state of Oregon. Am I to believe that the total budget for this for the next 2 years is around $120 million statewide? Is that the kind of money? Because even 12 million for Clackamas County, this is a lot of money, and of course this is not new either. You know, we've been doing this for years, right? Mm-hmm. And so, is this $12 million over the next 2 years effective?
We believe it's effective. It's education, it's deterrence. If you go,
And Mr. Cook, is this targeted at our K-12 to prevent our young people from smoking?
Philip, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. Philip Mason Joyner, Public Health Division Director. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Scholl. I just want to clarify that $12 million is for our contract, our local public health agreement with the state. So part of that's tobacco prevention and education. We receive about a few $100,000 every year for that. And so this is just $20,000 of additional revenue that has come in. This is funded by tobacco taxes, and it's staggered throughout the biennium. We receive, this is a pretty small payment, $20,000 that we receive throughout the course of the agreement.
Okay, so the 12 million then is used for other health-related issues other than just tobacco prevention. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner West?
Does this deal with like the vaping? I want to call, as I'm a dad of a teenage son, I feel like all the teenagers vape now. I don't know if that's just I don't know if I'm the only one out there as a father, but I feel like I'm battling vaping with the kind of the young people that are around me. Does it talk to the uniqueness around the use of those products?
Yep. This funding, we're allowed to address tobacco in the broadest sense, vaping, cigarettes, to all sorts of emerging products that are out there.
Does it go beyond, like, because I know we have some of the products, like you may not use tobacco, but you're inhaling hot liquid into your lungs, and so then you have popcorn lungs or wet lung and things that are dangerous like that. Do we just kind of, is that pretty broad enough, do you think, to reach all that?
I'm sure we have staff that are dedicated full-time to the working with our schools and with our nonprofits around curriculum and education for this program around preventing youth use of tobacco products.
Okay.
I know that is definitely a bad health outcome we don't want to see, and certainly something that the program does work to address.
Thank you.
And educate folks on.
And I will say, in some of the schools, will allow these staff to go into the health classes,
Oh,
and that's
okay.
where they educate the kids on those type of issues.
Okay, thank you.
Nice. Seeing no further comments or questions, thank you.
Item 2, approval of an amendment to a grant agreement with the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department for administration of the Oregon Eviction Prevention and Diversion Program. Amendment value is $1,321,619 for 1 year. Total agreement value is $5,128,976 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department and $294,000 of statewide transportation improvement funds for the required 35% match. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, these funds are made available through Senate Bill 1530 for eviction prevention. The program offers short-term financial support to individuals and families at risk of eviction, primarily through rent assistance, utility payments, aiming to help individuals and families achieve long-term housing stability.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Human Services for non-medical Medicaid transportation. Agreement value is $840,000 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Human Services. No county general funds are involved.
The proposed agreement ensures essential non-medical transportation services for Medicaid recipients, enabling elderly and disabled individuals to remain independent, access essential services, and enhance their quality of life. Our central dispatch services are available for client inquiries and requests from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So when you say it's non-medical, is that like getting, where are they taking people if it's non-medical, it's medicated?
It's still, they could take them to the pharmacy, they could take them to dental appointments,
Okay.
medical appointments, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4, approval of a personal services contract with Laboratory Corporation of America for medical laboratory services. Total agreement value is $500,000 for 5 years. Funding is through revenue generated from county health centers' fees for services. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, diagnostic laboratory services are mandated by the Health Resources and Services Administration for federally qualified health centers. These funds will cover crucial services, including specimen pickup, testing, and phlebotomy services, a core component of our patient care.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 5, approval of an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for the financing of community mental health, addiction treatment, recovery and prevention, and problem gambling services. The amendment rescinds $1 million for 13 months. Total agreement value is decreased to $16,967,595.75 for 18 months. Funding is returned to the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, and so I have Mary. Mary, you can come on up. Because we typically we don't rescind, but basically what happened here is there was problems hiring staff for this particular effort. And so I'll let Mary speak more eloquently to it, but that's basically what's happening. There's a staff shortage. We weren't able to do that, so we came to the conclusion that
Go
it was in
ahead,
our
Mary.
best.
Introduce yourself, please.
Mary Rumbaugh, Behavioral Health Division Director. This was an amendment that we came to you last year or earlier this year, specific to the aid and assist population. The state awarded $1 million to 6 counties to do a pilot that would end at the end of June of 2025. I spoke to you then about my concerns about doing a pilot because of hiring. But when I talked with my team, they said, more resources are better than none. And this pilot is very specific to a caseload of 1 to 15 for folks at the Oregon State Hospital. We recruited, we've been unsuccessful in hiring either somebody who can pass the background checks, or we just aren't getting applicants because it's a limited term position. So we had a failed recruitment again. We approached the Oregon Health Authority. The data collection ends in June of 2025. We'd be just so far along without really any good data that they agreed that we should just go ahead and return the funds at this time. So five counties are still doing the pilot. It's not a huge loss. It's unfortunate, but we feel good with the decision.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, good morning, Mary. This staff shortage was for mental health professionals?
Correct. The model was a bachelor level case manager and a recovery peer.
And if this was not a short-term job, would you still see a shortage on applicants? The reason I ask this question is we're looking at the concept for a recovery center, which will be manpower intensive in this area. How are we doing out there for training people to step up to do these mental health related jobs? Are we going to have a shortage in a couple of years when our recovery center comes online?
I think that there's been a lot of work and will continue to be a lot of work through the upcoming legislative sessions to try to get that sort of education pipeline happening. So I think in a couple of years we'll be okay. We are rebounding a little bit from COVID, but we still have significant vacancies for master level and bachelor level positions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Item 6, approval of a revenue intergovernmental agreement with the City of Gladstone for a mental health services coordinator. Total agreement value is $100,000 for 2 years. Funding is through the City of Gladstone. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, the Behavioral Health Division will collaborate with the Gladstone Police Department and the City of Gladstone to embed a mental health services coordinator with Behavioral Health's Mobile Crisis Response Team, supporting individuals facing mental health and addiction challenges without involving law enforcement.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 7, approval of an amendment to a subrecipient grant agreement with Central City Concern for Chez Ami Mental Health Housing Operations. Amendment value is $12,559.01 for 19 months. Total agreement value is $439,600.72 for 3 years. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Chez Ami is a 40-unit low-income housing community in Happy Valley, providing vital supportive services to Clackamas County residents. The agreement allocates funds for essential operations like rent subsidies, building maintenance, personnel costs, utilities, and other services to maintain the community's affordability and sustainability, ensuring its stability for vulnerable populations.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So we're done with the regular consent list, but now we're moving to the regular issues list that does include 2 consent items from last week, or 2 weeks ago. You asked to revisit. They're also for Health, Housing, Human Services. I'll read them one at a time, and Rod will answer any further questions you may have. So first, approval of a subrecipient Blueprint Community Health Improvement Grant with the Oregon Firearm Safety Coalition to reduce firearm-related suicides. The agreement value is $50,000 for 18 months. Funding is through Health Share of Oregon. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, so we brought this before you last issue session, and in between meetings, we also answered your questions. I can go through those answers here, or
Sure.
Okay. So basically, the overall piece of this is the Oregon Firearm Safety Coalition. I think there were some questions about that. So to prevent firearm suicide among youth and adults is what this is about. The organization will work with partners to create behavior change by normalizing secure storage of all firearms and storing firearms outside the home, or disassembling firearms to create time and distance from the firearm when gun owners struggle with mental health. The Blueprint Community Grant will allow OFSC to build partnerships with the diverse groups of firearm owners in Clackamas County to provide secure firearm storage devices, education, suicide prevention, and mental health resources. It will also endeavor to educate kids to never touch firearms and to teach family members the importance of securing all firearms to prevent unauthorized access. It will also create a map of off-site firearm storage options that can be used by the firearm community and healthcare providers when developing a safety plan for those who are at risk. There were questions about, was this part of the existing law in Oregon called Extreme Risk Protection Order, or ERPO. And basically, the proposed work with the Oregon Firearm Safety Coalition is very different from ERPO and outside the scope of this project, so they would not be doing the work of the ERPO piece. Another question was the Oregon Firearm Safety Coalition is creating a voluntary process where firearm owners can decide to take their guns to a trusted and safe location for storage. Keyword there would be voluntary, because there was questions about, are we mandating this or is it voluntary? This could be done during a mental health crisis or a period of high stress that is defined by the individual. A gun owner may also choose to proactively store their gun in situations such as a young children visiting or when a house sitter is occupying the home while on vacation. Another question was, the answer to another question was, guns are not being removed. This program is about voluntary storage of firearms whenever the gun owner deems it necessary or appropriate. Currently, there are no locations in Clackamas County that offer this temporary storage. A last question, this project also provides training at local gun ranges for community members and offers access to free gun storage cases. So I believe that's the answer to all the questions that you had last week. And I think the concern was, were we forcing or was this voluntary? And I think you see through this, it's voluntary education really at the gun owner's will.
Thank you for answering those questions, Rod. Any questions or concerns? Seeing no objections.
All right, the second item is approval of a subrecipient grant agreement with the Little Blue Store to support a healthy retail pilot program. Agreement value is $20,000 for 10 months. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, I'll try to be shorter on this one. So this is the Little Blue Store, and this was about giving them a $20,000 grant so that they can, I believe it was 20,000, right? Grant so they can reconfigure their store so that they can sell produce as opposed to tobacco. And so some of the questions you were concerned about had to do with Clackamas County's, where the money was coming from. So Clackamas County is funded by the Oregon Health Authority to operate tobacco prevention and education program. You heard about TPEP a little bit earlier. These funds are solely generated by taxes on tobacco products and must be used for tobacco prevention and education in the state. Another question, Clackamas County Public Health developed this pilot, is administering the grant, providing technical support and connecting the small business to other resources. TPEP will evaluate this pilot to understand its effectiveness and potential for being expanded to other interested stores in the county. And I think I might have misspoke when I said who the owner had applied to last week. I said he applied to the state. The state gave the county the money, and he applied to the county. So I want to be on the record of clearing that piece up. Let's see, owners of the Little Blue Store independently decided to apply for this notice of funding opportunity. And as they stated in their application, we believe that tobacco negatively impacts community members physically and financially. We want to demonstrate our values as proud members of our community who do not want to see individuals' health negatively impacted. I'll stop there. I have a whole list of things, but if you have more questions, we can answer them.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, Rod, thank you for sending that information over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So these two items plus all the consent items you just discussed will be on tomorrow's business meeting for your final action. Thank you. Chair, if you don't mind, we'll go back to the North Clackamas items. So would you please convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, please?
Oh, recess is the Board of Directors, and the Clackamas Board of Directors, and convene as the North Parks and Recreation District Board.
This is request for consent agenda for the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Item 1, approval of a board order authorizing a community green infrastructure grant application for park improvements at the Jennings Lodge campus. Total application value is $500,000. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. No county or NCPRD general funds are involved. Chiaselli, Director of NCPRD. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Smith and directors. My name is Chiaselli. I'm the Director of North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. In June of 2023, the board approved 2 actions to facilitate the future development of a park in the Jennings Lodge neighborhood at 18525 River Road, which will address a park-deficient area of the district. The first action updated the intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon City School District, which allows for park development at the site without the use of any NCPRD funds for property acquisition. And the second action approved a professional services contract for design of the park. After a robust community engagement process, the design of the park is almost complete. So in preparation for construction, staff have prepared a construction funding strategy that includes actually 4 grants that funds almost the entire cost, or will fund almost the entire cost if we receive all of these grants, of construction. So I'm here today to request board approval of the first grant, a Department of Land Conservation and Development Community Green Infrastructure Grant for $500,000 for park construction. And this grant does not have a match requirement. And I'll just note that I'll be back early next year to request board approval of the remaining 3 grant applications to help fund park construction. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, good morning, Kim. This piece of property we're talking about here now, is that the piece of property directly behind the Jennings Lodge School?
Thank you for that question, Director Scholl. You're correct.
Okay.
It's immediately behind.
Okay, good, thank you.
Seeing no objections, thank you very much.
Thank you. Chair, would you please reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I'll recess as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
Next to the regular issues list for the Board of County Commissioners, Federal Emergency Management Agency National Flood Insurance Compliance Measure Draft Letter. There's a memo and draft letter in your packet. Presenting is Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, and Jennifer Hughes, Planning Director.
Good morning again, Chair Smith, Commissioners, nice to see you. We are here to kind of follow up on a presentation that we did back on November 7th. And that was regarding some changes that the Federal Emergency Management Agency is requesting of various Oregon counties and other jurisdictions, cities, regarding the floodplain ordinances or the development procedures for projects within floodplains within specific jurisdictions. For the sake of the public, I'm going to get this wrong, Jennifer, so correct me when I'm wrong. Just for the public good, we have a variety of floodplains areas within Clackamas County. We have a floodplain ordinance that dictates how you develop in those floodplain areas. They deal with how high you elevate the building, treatments to the building, et cetera. We also have a national flood insurance program that goes through the federal government that developments within floodplains can participate in. We have 980 approximately policies throughout Clackamas County that insures $290 million, give or take, value worth of improvements. So, and that program is administered by FEMA. FEMA now has had a legal challenge to some of their requirements, and essentially as a result of that legal challenge, they are now requiring local jurisdictions to do what they call PICM, which is pre-implementation
compliance measures.
Thank you. We're killing this right now. And essentially, it's a intermediate requirement to change the criteria in which you approve development within the floodplain. There will be additional standards, additional changes that will be done. We're estimating probably 2027, but this is adjustments or decisions we have to make to deal with that gap between now and that 2027 date. We came to you, you told us to go away and to essentially assess what option is most viable. You told us to draft a compliance schedule, which we have done, and we're going to return to you actually with a more comprehensive discussion around this on December 18th. We're scheduled for a presentation on that. We are simply here to get your authorization to submit the letter that's attached to your materials. Essentially what it does is it informs, again, the deadline for this decision was December 1st. And so in the interest of being good partners with FEMA, we are looking to submit this letter, which basically gives FEMA, it informs them of a couple different things. One, hey, we appreciate the fact you want us to do this by December 1st. We aren't able to do that because of state law and land use requirements and notification requirements, et cetera. But number two, we are assessing our options. We may choose, we think we're going to choose either, what was it, option one, pathway one or pathway two. We think that's probably where we're going to go. And essentially, here is our schedule for getting that adopted into our code. And then lastly, it tells them, hey, here's what we plan to do in the interim between December 1st deadline, which is the deadline you've established, and we can get it adopted, which we think is going to be sometime in May. That essentially is adding a condition of approval that requires the applicant to do some additional steps through the federal government and through their processes. That's very general, but in short, we're looking for, the simple request today is your authorization to submit the letter that's attached. Jennifer would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, thank you very much. Your letter looks fine, but I have a question here. People in the county often report to me, Commissioner Scholl, my insurance on my home is getting out of hand in terms of expense. And so I don't know if there's any relationship between the FEMA National Flood Insurance Compliant Measure, and does it in any way affect the decision-making on the cost of insuring a home in Clackamas County?
I wouldn't anticipate that because I think the costs are really based more on the flood damage that occurs and needing to, make sure that they're collecting enough to cover the flooding that we see around the country. This is more designed to comply with the Endangered Species Act, so it's really not about insurable damages.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? We have a letter to consider in front of us.
Move to approve the letter as crafted.
I'll second.
Commissioner Savas has moved that we approve the draft letter to FEMA, which I guess it's not a draft anymore.
Well, with this vote, it's not.
And Commissioner West has seconded the motion. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the poll?
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Madam Chair.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you so
work.
much.
Gary, what's next?
Thank you. Next, Main Street Courthouse Committee Report and Recommendations. Presenting this today will be Emily Klepper, Senior Policy Advisor in County Administration. Nancy Bush was not feeling well, so has left. But Emily staffed the committee and will give the report, and I will assist as needed. Welcome, Emily. Go ahead.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Commissioners. At your direction, an advisory committee was formed in September to consider the disposition of the Main Street Courthouse. Because as you know, the replacement courthouse is still on time to be completed in May. I'm here to present the committee's final report. First, I would like to thank the committee members, Chair Smith and Commissioner Schrader participated, Oregon City Mayor Denise McGriff, who's in the room, Juliana Allen on behalf of the Downtown Oregon City Alliance, Victoria Meinig on behalf of the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce, Jeff Schaefer on behalf of the Oregon City Business Alliance, James Graham on behalf of the City of Oregon City, he's also in the room, and our own Laura Edmonds. So the committee met 3 times in the month of October and also took a tour of the existing courthouse, the Main Street Courthouse. The committee considered several aspects related to the facility disposition and discussed many of the possibilities. At the end of the 3rd meeting, there was consensus on the recommendation along with a request for some considerations. The Main Street Courthouse Committee recommends that the board sell or transfer the Main Street Courthouse to an entity that would contribute to the economic vitality of the Oregon City downtown area. In addition, the committee did put forward some ideas and further considerations for the board to consider, including opportunities for continued public engagement and communication with stakeholders, a possibility to include criteria if you so chose to move forward with a selection process that would preserve or enhance the long-term economic vitality of the downtown Oregon City area, and encourage, where economically feasible, the preservation or reuse of the facility's unique architectural features and assets. So the final report is in front of you today. We have a few representatives in the audience and obviously the chair and commissioner who served. And with that, I will finish and turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. We had 3 meetings. They were all robust. Each member was able to contribute what they thought they needed to contribute. We had huge discussions on about every possible aspect of what to do with this courthouse. We had some very enlightening presentations from Dan Robertson, our facilities manager, taking a look at some of the conditions in there in the courthouse, which even surprised me. We had, like I say, a tour of the inside and the outside, and it was very enlightening and awakening for the people in the courthouse, on this committee. And after that, our first meeting of the tour, the general consensus, most people that made up this committee said to me personally, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for building a new courthouse, because the working conditions in this building are really abysmal. And, we say that this courthouse was built for a population of 50,000, and we now have a population of about 425,000. You can't even imagine that until you go down in some of these rooms and the nooks and crannies where our employees are working in basically a dungeon without windows. And there's desks stacked on desks and desks and desks. And I look forward to the day when we're able soon to move into our new courthouse. We had much discussion around the wonderful architectural and historical aspects of this courthouse. I don't know what this board wants to do with that going forward if we agree with this memo to sell it. I think it would have to be up to the new developer. I also think anybody buying this beforehand, Gary, needs to be able to have available to them the reports that we saw, our appraisal, and, lay on the table as much information as we had as possible, so they know what they're getting into on that.
Yep.
We even considered what it would look like if we were to tear it down. And there are so many complications around the county trying to tear that down. Just so you know, we had Shelley Perini lead our group. We had a lot of discussion. She asked us questions, and we had columns and questions, and we put notes on it, and it was a very, very thorough vetting. So I think any question that you were to ask today, you could get an answer to. Commissioner Schrader, you accompanied me on this committee.
Yep.
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, yeah, I think that we had just gotten information about the State Historic Preservation Office. Emily, could you tell us what that piece of that was exactly? What is that overlay that we may or may not, that we have to be dealing with? It doesn't have a historic preservation National Trust overlay, but because it's a historic building over 50 years old, SHPO will be involved in one way or another. Is that correct? You would
Right.
assume
I
that?
think council can speak to this a little too, but the State Historic Preservation Office, there is a requirement that the county coordinate.
Okay.
Anytime a building is over 50 years, we have to coordinate any renovations or any changes we might make to that. Jane, please.
Jane, could you tell me what do you mean when you say coordinate? I mean, who do we?
I think it really means inform. I don't think it really takes away our ability to dispose of the courthouse, but I think we have to keep them in the loop and let them know what our plans are. So if there is something that they, would like to raise with us, they can do that before any permanent action is taken.
And we haven't been in touch with anyone from SHPO at
I'm
this
not aware
point to
that you
even
have.
talk about that. That might be something we.
No, not yet, not yet.
Oh, probably something we may have to do at
Yes.
some point. Okay. That's all I have.
Who's next to you? Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The first one's an easy one. Is our role here today to simply accept the recommendation, the report?
Accept, reject, or modify? We're looking for your direction, though, based on these recommendations.
All right. So my main question is, in the recommendation, as I read it, is it anticipated that the entity would be a private sector entity in which it ultimately gets back on the tax rolls? Or was it for a public entity that would eventually transfer it to a private entity for ownership, or what? It's kind of vague there, so that's what I'm trying to understand, what entity meant or
I can-
anticipated.
Sure. I can defer to the chair or commissioner if they'd like to respond, but I'll say my memory is that all of those were considerations that were on the table. And so what was contemplated by the group was that the next step might be the board entertain the idea of putting out a solicitation, an RFEI, a request for economic interest. So that's where interested parties would respond to our solicitation and would be able to give the board a proposal of what they would envision happening there and the economic potential of their project as well. So, and that could be anybody who would solicit something like that.
Conversation mainly surrounded by the economic viability of the downtown area. And we felt in order to enhance the downtown businesses, would have this turned over to a private party to get it back on the tax rolls and to develop it for return on investment. Is that fair to say?
Yep, completely.
Commissioner Savas, go
Yeah,
ahead.
just if I could, thank you. So, I guess on the face of it then, with that explanation, I guess I'm inclined to accept the recommendation. I just want to make sure that prior to this committee being formed, we had a lot of outreach from the city and the chamber and members of the community wanted us to convene something like this. I just want to get a sense, maybe not necessarily here today, but if the city and the mayor and everyone else feels as though we've met that obligation and everyone feels good that the voice was expressed and the process was good and the recommendation is broadly supported. I guess that's a question / doesn't have to answer it today, but I just want to just kind of get that sense. And no one reached out to me about today so I heard nothing from no one. So if we accept it today, that's great. But if there's any concerns, I'd like to know about them right now.
All I can say the committee unanimously supported this.
Yes.
This recommendation that's before you today.
Okay, and we haven't heard any opposition. Okay, so I'm willing to accept it, just to put it out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner West and then Commissioner Scholl.
Can you talk to me a little bit about what happens with Liberty Plaza and how large that whole lot is? And and then how viable is this space even with it falling into the Willamette?
Liberty Plaza was not under consideration on this committee. The condition of the courthouse is what we looked at. We did not have a discussion with Liberty Plaza.
Not at all.
Gary and Jane, I assume Liberty Plaza still remains in county ownership?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I guess the decision for that comes later.
Okay.
We felt that this was a big enough lift, just dealing with the courthouse.
Okay, and just for the public's edification, if they may not know, Liberty Plaza is the plaza adjoined right to the side of, if you're facing, I guess, the right-hand side of the courthouse, right?
And I know the full history of that, but I don't want to bring it up here. I know how it came
So I
about.
didn't know if that was part of this, because it almost feels like when you look at it, they're kind of one in this. They're not, I get, but yeah. Sorry, I will stick to the courthouse, but I didn't know if that was part of it. And then, just the engineering, it's a valuable piece of land. It's in a great location. It's also a very old city with all kinds of old things running in and over and all through its entire, underground, above ground. It's just an old place. So do we know anything just about the feasibility of the land, the viability of it, securing it so it can be developed? What is that? Do we even know anything about that?
I think Chair Smith's earlier comment about making all of the available reports open to whoever might need to see them if they're contemplating, if you choose to move forward with a process, will help inform that new proposal.
Okay.
Included in that are the deferred maintenance, what the land looks like, geotechnical reports, estimates that facilities has done about how much or what it would look like to try to shore up that eroding area underneath.
Mitigation.
So all of those should be made available.
When I look at these, thank you. When I look at these considerations, more public engagement, trying to figure out how to make it economically viable, in some way entice the private sector to participate in it because it needs to be a private sector project. Is that basically where we're at today?
Yeah.
Okay, I can support that.
Yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Scholl?
Good morning, Emily. Okay, so we're going to move into the new courthouse in May.
Correct.
And do we have a time frame, a deadline for moving all of our assets out of the old courthouse?
May 1st, 2025, the new courthouse will open, fully staffed and ready to go.
Right, and then for moving completely out of the Main Street courthouse, so that it's in a position where we can actually look at either selling or transferring it, what date is that going to be?
It's approximately 30 days after that, so by the end of June,
Okay.
the current Main Street courthouse will be cleared.
Right.
Okay, so at what date should the board approve your recommendation here? What date do you tend to do the request for economic interest?
So should the board direct that today, which I recommend you do, we'd start that process immediately, because we're
Okay.
in the 6-month window here for the board to make a decision.
Okay, I would agree that would be a good idea. And the last question I have is, you said sell or transfer. Now, is there a public entity that has expressed interest in the transfer of the Main Street courthouse to their control? And if so, does that public entity have the financial ability, would they have the financial ability to actually remodel this, which is going to be a very expensive project?
I'll answer that one. So to be fair, Mayor, in the past, the city of Oregon City has informally suggested they might be interested.
Okay.
No formal request yet.
Okay.
However, if you direct us to do a RF, a request for interest,
Yeah.
I'm sure they would express their interest at that time, and they could then discuss, the board could
Okay.
discuss how that would occur.
Okay,
that
so,
And do we need a motion for this, Gary? or-
Eventually, I'd ask for a motion today. Yes,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Mark is still talking.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
so
Mark,
I
didn't mean
was
to
just going to
interrupt.
say that I would also recommend that we do a motion
Okay.
for a request for economic interest soon, today. Thank you.
If we do a request for economic interest, what does that look like?
So staff would begin it's basically a bid process that would go out to the community, public and private sectors, would have a certain period of time, maybe 30 days, to respond. Are they interested in buying or asking you to transfer the courthouse? So we collect all that information from interested public and private sector, probably early February, and then come back to the board for you to make a decision.
Are there any sidebars? If we approve that today, are we interested in any sidebars on this, commissioners? For instance, we have some unique architectural features, and you've discovered some on the inside and the outside. If a proposed builder would like to save some of those and incorporate them in a new building, or maybe they want to totally go in and remodel, I suppose that's up to them too. Do we want to put sidebars like that on it?
Sure, you could do
Oh,
that.
no, I'm asking, I don't know. I don't want to be so cumbersome that it makes it not so expensive for a new builder, but hey, you know, there's some gargoyles hanging off there. We have some, right? We have some wonderful doors on walk-in safes that we may transfer one of those over to the new courthouse of steel that's engraved. We're hoping to get some of that, a form of art, you know, past and present and future. I just don't know. I think it might be difficult to assign a value or give instructions for that, just thinking. Paul, were you up next? Go ahead.
Yeah, so in regard to this, I would like to have the scope of the RFI come back to us for review. I wouldn't want to have it too constrained.
Right.
I don't mind language that recognizes the rich history, the historic aspects of not only the property and the building and all the artwork, but, you know, I mean, I think if, just knowing some of the history of the courthouse, I mean, there's I won't say a culture per se, but in a way there is for the downtown as far as related industries and opportunities and historic figures and so forth that have been around the county. So, you know, I wouldn't want to have sideboards that limit, right, that wide open thinking, but I also want to make sure that that there's at least a financial ability for whoever bids for this, that they can actually follow through with whatever it may be, right? So that's why I just want to make sure I just put my foot in the door here and say, I'd like to have the scope come back to us to make sure that it's all open, it was welcoming, but it also has, again, viability that whoever the applicant is making the bid, that they have the financial wherewithal to proceed.
I would agree. Commissioner West?
There's just so much like stewardship that has to happen in downtown Oregon City. You have the Blue Heron plant. We would all love to see that move forward. That's out of our hands right now, but that impacts the livability and the vitality of the entire region, and it's right there in the heart of that same area, just a couple blocks from the courthouse. And right now it sits there as looking more like a place to get a tetanus infection than somewhere where you're going to find like economic vitality, but we're waiting anxiously to have it become something beautiful right there at the historic spot at the Willamette Falls. And I am a little bit inspired by what Milwaukee did with their city hall, their old city hall, and how it turned it. You know, you have the facade of the old city hall, but they've turned that into a place where community can meet and gather and eat, and business happens and economic activity happens. I'm hoping maybe that the courthouse, I don't know if it's, I mean, you can think a lot of things. I don't know what it comes down to. I think the private sector will say it's either pencils out or it doesn't pencil out. I think one of the conversations we have to have as a county is, what are we willing to do to help participate to get that to pencil out, is also kind of looming. And I think as we put too many restrictions on it, it makes it less likely. If you try to regulate it or get too involved, then that can maybe chase away potential developers. You know, are we going to sell the property? Are we going to gift the property? What are we going to do as a board? We have not talked about that publicly, really. I don't know what is right. I don't know the right answer today. But we have to be stewards of Oregon City also. It's in our county, and it is historic, and it's a valuable place that needs to be available to all. So I don't know. I think there's still further conversations, but I would want to echo exactly what Commissioner Savas says with the caveat of, like, I think we need to start talking about, like, what is our role as a county? We own this property. I don't want us to be the next Blue Heron plant. So that's
Agreed.
part of my concern.
We discussed that too. I forgot what I was going to say. Commissioner Schrader, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. At the very least, as we move ahead with this, at the very least, okay, I would like to see preservation of some of the architectural artifacts there. And I want to remind folks, again, having been here for so long, we had a very robust Goal 5 historic preservation program in this county where we identified historic structures across the county, and we're able to significantly get dollars, not only from SHPO, but the National Trust for Historic Preservation, in order to do that. That was actually one of the key functions of our planning department at the time. And as things changed through the years, that planner retired. And it may behoove us as talking to her at some point about what the potential possibilities are. I don't think it was ever listed. It may have been listed as a county landmark. I don't know if Denise knows the answer to that or not, but I think that's something we should be looking into.
I hear somebody shaking their head no.
No, was not a county landmark, but it does fit that criteria. So that's my personal bias, knowing what has happened before in this county and how this was an important element of what we did, because we're, the first county, 1843, in the whole state of Oregon. So, and I'd like to make sure that as we put this economic piece out, that we get a broad representation, not only of traditional developers, but people who actually know how to do this kind of work, should we move forward. Because restoration and rehabilitation of historic buildings can be done. They can be done well. They're never cheap, I'll be honest. So that's a conversation that people have to be aware of. And at least I'd like to make sure that anchor down in that, with the history of that courthouse, somehow remains, at least to get this on the legislative record, at least remains intact.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Before I go to Commissioner Shaw, I remembered what I was going to say. There was a lot said during this. Also, a concern of this committee was the carrying costs the county would incur over time to maintain a vacant building. And of course, we have to secure it. We have to watch out for vandalism. You know, basically, we need to keep the heat on. And that was quite a bill for that for a year, wasn't it, Gary?
Do you remember, Emily?
$1,000,000.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
I think
I'll
it
have
was
to get back.
$400,000 a year. Does that sound about right?
That sounds close, yes.
Yeah, and so that's really a cost that we don't want to incur, so a decision would, for economic considerations, should be forthright on this. Commissioner Shaw?
Yes, well, I would like to see the board today go ahead and direct staff to put together the request for economic interest document without any specifications or restrictions on it, with a deadline to come back to the county, say, 1 March. That gives potential folks 3 months to consider what they might want to do with the building. And if we have the deadline 1 March, on 1 March or thereafter, we then could assess these economic interest concepts and then put restrictions or specifications on the sale or transfer of the building. I don't think we need to put any restrictions on it now. Let the community come back to us with a large, parameters of possibility for the building. And then 1 March or thereafter, we'll look at that and consider what we want to do, transfer or sell, and then add any kind of specifications in terms of details that we want to add to the documents for sale.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I'm ready to get the ball rolling.
Go ahead, make a motion.
I move to accept the committee's recommendation for the courthouse.
I'll second.
Commissioner Savas has moved to accept the Main Street Courthouse Committee recommendations that the Board of County Commissioners sell or transfer the courthouse to an entity that would fully contribute to the economic vitality of downtown Oregon City area. And Commissioner West has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the poll?
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Madam Chair.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Commissioners, we are going to take a 5-minute recess.
Chair, could I just make a motion for the RFI?
Oh, do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Can you define that?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll
Go
do that
ahead.
in the motion. So I move that staff craft a RFI based on the conversation today and bring it back for board approval.
I'll second.
Commissioner Savas has made a motion to craft an RFI for the disposition of the courthouse and bring it back to the board for approval, and Commissioner West has seconded that motion. Further discussion? Mark?
Chair, what's the time frame for that coming back to us?
2 weeks.
Okay?
All
This
righty.
board will make that decision. We'll bring it back to you in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
All righty. Yeehaw. Cooking with gas now. Okay. Would the clerk please take the poll?
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Madam Chair.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Now we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay, great.
Thank you. We will reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners. Gary, what's next?
Thank you, Chair. So with the Chair's approval, we are going to pause on the issues list. We'll come back to the issues list because there's more items. We're going to now go to the scheduled policy session, which is the American Medical Response Contract Update. But first, Chair, would you please convene as the Board of Health?
Go ahead.
No, would you please convene as the Board of Health, Chair?
Excuse me. We will recess as Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Board of Health.
Thank you. This is American Medical Response, AMR, Contract Update. Health, Housing, Human Services team will present. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Philip Mason Joyner, Public Health Division Director. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This policy session is for the Board of County Commissioners to, one, review American Medical Response Northwest compliance with the current ambulance services contract, and two, to provide direction to staff on next steps. And those next steps might be a new performance-based contract or RFP, but Philip Mason Joyner will talk more about that. So I'll hand it over to Philip.
Thank you, Rod. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. Yes, as Rod said, we are here to provide a essentially 6-month progress update on how AMR is doing with their current contract compliance for the extension that's in place right now, the 1-year extension that this board approved earlier this year, and to seek board direction. This extension expires next spring. May 1st will be here in no time, so begin to have that conversation as the Board of Health. Just for some context and a little bit, I won't go into the whole history, but a little bit of background for the public watching. The current existing ambulance contract with AMR Northwest has been in place in Clackamas County for over 10 years. The first 10 years, the contract has been in place. AMR met its contractual obligations, and the primary metric or performance measure that the ambulance company was accountable to was around response times. That they arrive on scenes for medical 911 calls 90% or more of the time on time. And if you, based on the type of call that comes in, and if you're in an urban area or a rural area, those times that they have to make it onto the scene differ. But that's what they're accountable to. The contract expired April 30th or May 1st of this year, and the Board of Health, this body, was tasked to determine a path forward. We entered into a contract extension for 1 year to give AMR time to improve the workforce challenges, and there is a paramedic shortage around the country. And also, they had accumulated liquidated damages totaling $1.158 million. In order to come to a 1-year extension, AMR provided a new program that we've talked a lot about in this forum, the Nurse Navigation Program, which was started implementation in September and has proved to be successful. We are the first county in Oregon to implement that program. They've also provided, we required them to provide $200,000 this year in additional paramedic scholarships, and I'm happy to share that they provided over $400,000 worth of scholarships this year. And then AMR needs to meet or to exceed their response time requirements for 3 consecutive months in order to have last year's liquidated damages, the fines that have accumulated, to have those forgiven. You'll see in attachment 1 of your memo that we have it broken down in tables for you where you can review it month to month, the first 6 months of the extension. They have not yet met the 90%. Response time is incrementally improving. You can see there's a trend where things appear to be getting better. They are more staffed currently this year than last year. Turnover continues to be a challenge. And I'll just kind of leave it there at this point. But, the workforce challenges, I would say, are improving, but it continues to be one of the primary drivers for why they're still not yet able to make that 90% metric. And I think I'll just pause there. And really today is to provide you with an update, see what questions you have, and also to see what direction you would like to take around next steps for this contract.
Oh, thank you. I was talking with AMR about their situation, and they are making headway on training paramedics and bringing them forward, and they're almost there on their response times. And AMR told me a fact, and then I double-checked it to make sure. They said, well, we hear that, the fire departments are gearing up to hire 32 paramedics in the next year. And they usually look at AMR as a farm team for that. Although if you have a scholarship through the AMR, which we have allowed in lieu of fines, you have to stay with AMR for 2 years. So I called up Nick Brown, CCFD1. I says, Nick, what's going on with your hiring? He says, well, 32, let's just say it this way, because the fire department has the new bond, or excuse me, the levy for hiring. And Nick says, in spring, we're due to hire 12 paramedics, spring of 25. In the fall of 25, they want to hire 16 paramedics. And then in the spring of 26, they want to hire 12 paramedics. And he says, but that should not be your only consideration. He said, Tualatin is going to be doing a lot of hiring paramedics, as is the city of Portland. And we know that if you're a paramedic and you can get hired by the fire department, it's a pretty good gig for a lot of reasons. Working conditions, the pay is better, and so forth. So whereas his contract may not be perfect going forward, I haven't seen it yet. It may not be perfect, but I do think it behooves us to give stability to a company and a peace of mind to the citizens of Clackamas County, that the best that we can to offer ambulance service when they call up 911. And I do think the nurse navigation will add exponentially to that as we go forward on that. And so, Commissioners, I would like to go ahead with the contract and have staff engage and do what's necessary on that. We have a couple of commissioners in the queue. Commissioner, who's up next? You? Savas?
I believe it's Mark.
Mark, go ahead.
Thank you. Philip and Rod, you mentioned that AMR had invested $400,000 in paramedic scholarships. Can you tell the board when we will see results from this investment, and what numbers of trainees might be coming out of training as a result of that scholarship investment? And when? How soon? Do we know?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner.
Yeah.
We anticipated that you might be asking that, so we do have that information.
Okay.
This has been ongoing over a year. We do have paramedics that have already gone through the program, graduated, and are now providing services in Clackamas County. The most recent batch, 6 of these scholarship EMTs are graduating and will begin being paramedics in February of 2025. So we are seeing the workflow. Folks are moving through the programs, graduating, and it's happening.
Okay.
It's looking good.
Okay, well, keep an eye on that. And the other question I have for you, regarding your 4 potential options for the board, the third one, which is to request proposals for other companies, what are the alternate EM providers out there? And is there a potential there might be one that's available, at lesser cost and at greater efficiency or quicker response times? Or is that just a pie-in-the-sky dream that is not really a reality?
I think
In other words, Philip, are we pretty much locked into AMR? And is there no other real viable alternative to AMR out there that would be an improvement for the board to consider?
Well, this agreement, the board has a lot of flexibility here because it is a franchise agreement and the contractor has exclusive rights to provide these services in Clackamas County. Competition for private ambulance companies, to be honest, is very limited. The market is limited. AMR is the primary player. They're providing services now in Clackamas, Multnomah, Washington, and Clark counties. There are a couple other ambulance companies that provide services in the region and in Marion County, but it is limited. So in terms of will it provide lower cost? Will it provide better quality? Will they be able to plug in? recognizing that AMR has been our contractor since the 90s, if not before then. That's all unknown territory.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say that, I appreciate our partnership with AMR and their years of service. I know that since COVID had impacted us all, things have been a little bit rockier, and then aggravating that was taking on the Washington County, which I think further maybe impaired our partner as far as the labor considerations. And I'm also, from what I heard today, concerned about the labor pool considerations going forward, knowing that that's a limit. There's a limited amount of people that can do this work. And while I also, again, I just have respect with our partners and the employees and all the folks that work there, I really, and we have, in recognition of that, we've waived a considerable amount of fines in that period of time. But in my opinion, if nurse navigation was just launched here, a month or so ago, it seems wise to allow a couple, 3 more months to see if the trends continue, see how nurse navigation's doing. If I see a substantial jump, then I could say, great, maybe that investment in nurse navigation was a good thing. I'm hearing that they're having good results in Clark County, but I don't have the details for Clark County or know any of the inside stuff on that. But we have time. We have. When did we renew this last year? What time, or this year? Yeah, this year. Which month did we renew this or extend it for a year?
It became effective May 1st of this year.
But when did we actually take the action as a board?
April.
So we got several months in front of us. We got 5 months. So it seems right now, in my opinion, Paul's opinion, not necessarily responsible and somewhat premature to act now with the fact that they haven't met that standard of 3 consecutive months in the 90 percentile, as I understand it. Is that right, Philip? The 90 percentile?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, Commissioner.
The performance standards are 90% versus the 70, 80s, right?
Correct, 90%.
That's the threshold. We wanted 3 consecutive months that the board set that standard. So with that said, Chair, I'll yield back.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Commissioner Scholl.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate Commissioner Savas's comment, but should we wait on this and wait till, say, March? Wouldn't we be putting ourselves into a jam to get this locked on and resolved by 1st of May? I mean, I don't want to see us get in a situation where we run past the 1 May deadline like we did last year. As I recall, we got behind, didn't we, on looking at this contract? So I don't want to have that happen next year. So we need to figure out a time to get this, to instruct the staff to begin negotiations with AMR on the performance-based contract well before April. And so my question then is, why not do it now or in December to get it going? Because it's going to take you some time to put it together.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? I'm agreeing with Commissioner Scholl. We have been dealing with this for a very long time, and it really should have been done by now. I don't think we have an alternative company to go to. Opening it up on the free market, open market would only delay the stability of what we need to have happen in our medical delivery system plans. So I would accept a motion as outlined on motion number 1.
Chair, I move to instruct staff to begin negotiations with AMR Northwest on the performance-based contract.
Second. Commissioner Scholl has moved that we engage in negotiations with AMR on a performance-based contract. Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, this is for a scheduled 1-hour session. This seems to be moving pretty quickly. We haven't even discussed, what the options were, and I think one is an extension, which we have plenty of time to do that. It only, if we did it in April of last year, certainly we can do it again. We set criteria, and we're not even recognizing our own measurements for doing that. We waived considerable amount of fines and also sitting at more. And typically a renewal like that, a contract to get that crafted at this time of the year in this short of a time period is not practical in my experience. So I just want to put it out there that our I want to make sure our options are, Gary. Our options are, number one, we can do another extension based on the standards and meet the criteria, or we could do a full-blown renewal in recognition that we haven't met the standards yet. So, and then what's the other option? Go out for an RFP?
Entirely new RFP.
Right, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting more time.
So I'll answer, but correct me if I'm wrong. So on the renewal with AMR, my memory is it was a struggle to do the 1-year extension, and I'm not sure AMR would agree to another 1-year extension. We could attempt that, but they may not agree with that. That was my interpretation.
That's correct, Gary. Everything would have to be negotiated whenever we touch this contract at all. Both parties have to agree.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing we have a motion on the table, seeing no other discussion, would the clerk please take the poll?
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader. Aye. Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
No.
Madam Chair.
Aye, motion passes 4-1. Thank you very much, and go out and do some hard work. Thank you very much.
All right, Chair and Commissioners, would you like to take a short lunch break or continue with the issues list? There are 5 items left on the issues list that will probably take some lengthy discussions.
And we also have SHS.
That's on the issues list.
Also.
Yeah.
We could do one of them. We can knock one out between now and noon,
Okay.
maybe. Maybe not.
That's okay, Commissioners? Keep going on the issues list?
We have 10 minutes until noon.
Okay. All right. Chair, would you please reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
We'll recess as the Board of Health and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, we're back to the regular county issues list. The next item is Metro Supportive Housing Services, Allocation Scenarios, and Impacts to Service Revenue. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Adam Brown, Deputy Director of Health, Housing, Human Services, will present. Go ahead, and there's a memo in your packet. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. We have Adam Brown here, who's been leading the team with this SHS work, and as you know, there's a reform going on, a lot of the conversations and discussions around that. He's been intimately involved in those, and so I'm going to hand the mic over to Adam Brown.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Brown, Deputy Director, Health, Housing, and Human Services. So, as Rod said, we are here with an update on the ongoing Metro Supportive Housing Services reform activities. The last update we gave you was on October 1st, when we shared details of the future of regional housing funding recommendations issued by Metro's Chief Operating Officer in July, along with revenue reductions that would occur in high-level scenarios that were under consideration at that time. On this month, on November 19th, as part of the ongoing dialogue between Metro representatives from the 3 counties and other interested parties to the reform activities, and following Metro Council's passing of a resolution in October to establish its priorities for SHS reform, Metro President Peterson provided a set of draft allocation scenarios that are more specific than anything we've seen to this point. Those scenarios reduce the personal income tax rate by 10% starting in 2026 and 25% starting in 2031. They extend the sunset from 2030 to 2050. They change the funding distribution methodology and set a fixed county allocation from 2021 base amounts of $250 million in one scenario and $225 million in the other scenario, and then inflated at 3% each year from 2021 and into the future. And I can explain more about that in a minute. Then the scenarios reallocate revenue in excess of those county allocations to affordable housing, cities, and additional, a bucket called additional resources that hasn't yet been identified. These scenarios use revenue assumptions that have not been provided to the counties, but notably they do deviate from the most recent forecast that we were provided in 2023. November 2023. We're scheduled to get a new revenue update on Monday, and the signaling from Metro has been that that revenue update will be a revision down from the November 2023 forecast, our current operating forecast. So I'm not going to bury the lead here. These scenarios reduce funding levels beyond anything that we've seen to this point. And the materials in your packet show reductions starting next fiscal year in 25-26, but we understand that Metro has clarified that if the reform moves forward on the current timeline, the reductions actually wouldn't happen until the following fiscal year 26-27. Based on our estimates from the two scenarios, Clackamas County's program funding would be reduced from the current forecast amount by between $22 and $28 million per year starting in fiscal year 26-27, which is 18 months from now. Because the county's forecasted SHS revenue is fully committed to ongoing programs and services, reductions in revenue cannot be absorbed without cuts to programs and services. And outside of this negotiation room, I've said that that is something to celebrate because our job has been to build these programs and services. Inside of that negotiation room, it's a point of tension because of the need to make program reductions. So if the reform efforts result in these revenue reductions, we would prioritize maintaining a balanced system, and that would mean reducing program capacity at each point along our services continuum, with the most significant reductions coming in permanent supportive housing, and I'll explain why here in just a minute. But there are a couple of things in your packet that I want to highlight for you. The first thing is a chart on the second page of the memo. That's this chart. Mm-hmm. So what you see here is our fiscal year 22-23 actual spending, 23-24 actual spending, these are the bars, our current year budget, 24-25 budget, and then from there, our forecasted spending into the future based on our ongoing program commitments. The red line up top is the current forecasted revenue amount. So our job to this point has been to build the programs at a level that is consistent with the anticipated amount of money that we're going to get. That's what we've done. Fiscal year 24-25 is the first year where all of our program funds are fully committed. So the dotted lines are Metro scenarios A1 and A2. And so you can see the revenue decreasing in 25-26 and then increasing at a flat 3% into the future. So when I said the bulk of the reductions would have to come in permanent supportive housing, it's because of what you see in the bars. The yellow portion of the bars represents our administrative funding. The dark blue portion represents our investments in supportive housing, and the light blue bar represents the rest of our continuum: outreach, shelter, housing placement and retention, et cetera, short-term rent assistance, those programs. So as you can see, the amount of money that's contemplated in scenarios A1 and A2 would really only be enough to just sustain our supportive housing investments, because that's about 60% of our overall program budget. So the next thing that I want to point out for you is I included a table here that has the line level detail of our ongoing program budget. That's in attachment 3. And I felt like it was important to include this because there's a narrative out there that Clackamas County could absorb the proposed reductions without significant impacts to our programs. This is not true, and so we've taken the step here of providing the line item budget by program, by service provider, so that folks can see exactly what is in.
You're talking, Adam, excuse me, you're talking about attachment 3 on page 10 in the packet.
That's
Yes.
correct. Yes. Thank you, Chair. The last thing that I'll point out to you is attachment number 2, this table, and I'll just go through and explain it really quickly. The top section is the current 5-year forecast with the distribution amounts contemplated for each county based on the formula. The second section is their scenario A1. This is where they've pegged the program funds at $250 million inflated from 2021. And so, and then you see these other buckets, housing, cities in the middle section here, where in this first year, $50 million goes to housing, $4.67 million goes to cities, and $260 million goes to counties. So that shows you the technical detail of this reallocation that Metro is considering. And then scenario A2 is deeper cuts to county programs and more funding for affordable housing in cities. Happy to take questions about that. Just real briefly before I wrap up my remarks here, the next meeting with Metro is scheduled for December 3rd, next week, Tuesday. Clackamas County will have an opportunity to share how it would prioritize system investments in this reduction scenario, the line detail of our program budget, and the unit production potential of each scenario's housing allocation. We intend to share our priority for focusing the reform efforts around 5 key considerations. 1, preserving local decision-making authority. We think we've been pretty good at this. We want to continue it and make decisions that are informed by Clackamas County's needs with an eye towards also achieving regional goals. We think it's important to have a measured and intentional changes and a transition period. We have tried to show up with a solutions-oriented approach to these conversations. And we think that we need to be really careful because we've built a system, we're hitting our stride. I don't think it's controversial that it would be good to use some of these funds for affordable housing development, but how we incorporate that into our program planning really matters. We want to maintain a balanced system. You've heard this from Vahid over and over. He has been the artist of this system that is functioning really well. You hear him talk about modest investments in outreach, modest investments in shelter, but only to the extent that those things are a conduit for ending people's homelessness and getting people into permanent housing, which is why the bulk of our investments are in the back end of the system. We also want to ensure the highest and best use of the resources. It turns out that the current framework for building affordable housing is really, really expensive. It's $500,000 a unit, and then you have to pair it with a rental subsidy to keep it deeply affordable to people at 30% or lower AMI. So we're not opposed to strategic capital investments, but we want them to be strategic. And we think there are opportunities out there leveraging with our housing authorities repositioning, maybe looking at apartment complexes that are available for sale where the doors are $200,000. Things like that, but not have a blind faith in the ability of the affordable housing framework to deliver the level of efficient, affordable housing that we need. The last thing is we want to address the risks and challenges. We know that we can't just dump a bunch of money into affordable housing, especially deeply affordable housing, because we don't have the rent vouchers and we don't have the supportive services funding that we need to sustain those units into the future. So it's a risk if we go blindly into that and we're not thinking about how we've calibrated our system. And so we're open to this, but we really want to be careful about it and assess those risks. And of course, the SHS measure, the whole spirit of it was to give us the services funding that we needed to support the affordable housing bond investments. So the upshot here is that Clackamas County needs to insist that reform efforts focus on these things. This is an important moment in the future of these programs, and we're committed to a solutions-oriented engagement. And we understand that there's going to be a need to make hard choices in the spirit of long-term benefit to our system. But we need to be thoughtful, measured, and intentional about the changes, or we risk breaking it along the way, failing to meet community expectations, and undermining public confidence in our ability to solve the problems together.
Finished?
That's all.
Thank you. This is very comprehensive. It's exactly what we were hoping to see today.
Thank you.
So if I get the scenario correct, on December 3rd, Tuesday of next week, Clackamas County is supposed to submit to Metro our, quote, priority list, but in essence, what it is a cut list. A cut list, correct?
That's correct. We would,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. That's all I need to know. I have two commissioners in the queue who I'm sure are very anxious. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna give a little bit of background to give context to my comments going forward, and a question or two I have for staff here. So it was several months ago that we learned of this effort by Metro. We were alarmed. We sent a letter saying, involve us. We want to sit at a round table with our other electeds to talk about this. I know there's interest from cities as well as just the counties. And, you know, we have a lot of work to do. And we got a reply back from President Peterson that yeah, we will in December. Well, that's around the corner. There's nothing scheduled. Yet all these conversations, reforms are happening in advance of that, and not contemplating our needs. While I recognize Multnomah County, City of Portland / are struggling in their relationship, their ability to provide services to those people, the realities of that. But you got two counties that are succeeding. You got Washington County that's doing a bang-up job, and you have Clackamas County that's doing a great job. So here we are succeeding, and yet I don't feel as though we are being asked as elected officials, what do we need? What would you prescribe? How would we move forward? Yet they are focused on what they are calling broken, which is not us. It's you know, / the City of Portland / Multnomah County, primarily Multnomah County. And I'm not here to be critical of Multnomah County, but nonetheless, you know, they ought to be looking to us for a model of what's right, how to approach this. So that's the recent history. I want to just go for a moment, go slightly back to when this measure was passed. The measure was passed right around the area where COVID popped up on us. And now we're seeing, I'm going to get down to really the numbers here, the financials of my question. Now we're seeing, you know, record historic inflation that this measure and the tax rate did not anticipate. We are seeing record challenges with the labor pool that we've never seen before in our history, right? So you have two critical things that are able to address and provide services, and that being the money you have to do it with and the labor pool. Adding housing to this, certainly, you know, that has gone up and accelerated. But the reality that we are learning, because there's a lot of good things to learn from Multnomah County, but it's not just Multnomah County. We're learning it too, that there's a certain population, and I hear that in Multnomah County, it's 60+% of the people that are experiencing houselessness, homelessness, are refusing service, whether it's services or it's housing or shelter. They're refusing it. And I think that from a humane standpoint, you know, and I know that every situation is different, we got to ask ourselves why. And that doesn't necessarily mean the dollars are not effective or our approach is not effective, or maybe it is. But the question really is, if that is the amount of population that's not being served, we have to drill down deeper. I think the preliminary conversations that I've heard and seen about this topic are, well, some of these people really need mental health treatment, behavioral health treatment, or they're addicted to drugs, and they need recovery centers. So that is, I think, the LIP, the local implementation plan that was adopted in what, was that 21 we adopted that, or 2020?
2022. 2022, I believe,
Okay.
spring of 2022.
It took a long time to get there,
Yeah,
Paul.
yeah. But there wasn't, that was, I was concerned when we passed that it was not really as flexible as it could have been, basically population A, population B, but really not a lot of language about behavioral health, about some of the issues about civil commitment, a number of the challenges about standing up facilities, putting sticks and bricks for recovery centers and so forth. That really wasn't anticipated in program. So having, really, I said it before, I'll say it again, having not reform, but recalibration of the LIP seems to be, and I believe, is the most appropriate measure. But talking to the people that are successful is important, just as it is important to talk to the people that are maybe not successful, let's just say Multnomah County right now, and figure out what it is we really need, as opposed to having a group of people that are not practitioners per se, that are not providing this service, that don't have the deep bench of providing those services. They're not asking us for our advice or anything else. So my question to you, Adam, is essentially this. Your presentation, or I won't say our presentation, our programming and forecast that you display here, just looking at the years ahead, is mental health and recovery centers expanding that? Is that baked in to these numbers?
The ongoing funding for a recovery center, no. Ongoing commitments for things like our Clackamas Village, the stabilization center, capital projects that we had already contemplated and were moving on and that are core in the homeless services system, yes. Now we're going to bring an updated spend down plan to you in a couple of weeks, and we're going to make recommendations around the board's desire to support the development of a recovery campus. And then we're committed to figuring out, transitional housing, how do we fold those things in? But I think what you're highlighting here is really the pressure. And I've talked with my Washington County colleagues about this a lot. They took the one-time funding that accumulated while our programs ramped up, and they've made strategic capital investments with that money, right? That's a really good use of one-time dollars. Let's take this opportunity while we build the programs, take that resource, invest in the built infrastructure that we need to deliver the services, and then let's sustain it ongoing with our ongoing funding. That's brilliant stewardship. The tension now is that we've anticipated having the ability to sustain those sites on an ongoing basis with the level of funding that has been forecasted, right? And so now there's a risk that we've tried to make capital investments and we won't be able to sustain the ongoing operation of those investments under this new revenue picture.
And Commissioner Schrader and I, have strong memories and concerns and a little upset, frankly, the fact that we were doing our best to ramp this up in a responsible way. Mm-hmm. And, we're all learning, and those two things, behavioral health as well, right? We don't have enough facilities. There's just a labor pool issue. There's statutory, things that I think could be recalibrated so that certification and licensing for people coming out of college or whatnot, people in the industry can, maybe get the bar where they can qualify, get more people in the labor pool to address this. But so your answer is on both behavioral health and recovery center, and those aspects aren't baked into our model. I know we're trying to live within our forecast, right? So we can't do it all.
Well, and I will say, I think Clackamas County is doing a really good job at system integration. We're working with our behavioral health partners, our health centers partners. We've gotten our health system partners at the table to talk about the Medicaid waiver implementation, how we leverage those funds. We're doing that service coordination, but that's going to get a whole lot harder if the ongoing funding that we have is reduced.
Right. Well, I think some of the efforts of this reform, as they call it, there's a couple of things there I don't have issue with per se, but it's about how or how much and involving us in a way. But I'm also very concerned about, which we're not really talking about here, but some of the things I've seen with regard to governance trouble me. It troubles me from a legal aspect and also from a financial aspect, the fact that we've made these investments and now they're basically going to put those in jeopardy. Those are public investments that have been made. So I just, I think legal recourse is not just one issue, but several. I'm very concerned, and I don't, it seems quite premature and way off base to be talking about cut scenarios when we're facing this inflationary spike, we're facing all these things, and we're still on the learning curve. I anticipated having 10 years, at least 7 years or so to learn this, build this, to figure out where we are. But to pull the rug out from under our feet this early is uncalled for, and frankly is not, I don't think is very cerebral. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner West.
I want to be very political right now, but I'm going to try to refrain a little bit and be a statesman today. I don't want to necessarily be too outspoken about how disappointed I am about the people who helped create this problem and then their inability to govern their way through it. I'm pretty emotional about this. Listen, I'm going to be honest with the Clackamas County voters. Like most of you, I didn't vote for this. I was super skeptical. Maybe I was right for not voting for it because the people who are now trying to govern it are showing me why I shouldn't give them the money. The people that are the status quo power in this region are going to cost people's lives, and they're going to languish in our streets. I ran as a county commissioner to solve this problem specifically and to partner with our staff to address it head on and to get it done. In the last 2 years, I am so proud of this county, like regional and national attention about how we are a model that can be replicated and doing it differently. And it was the county that said no, but the county that said we still have a job to govern. What do they want me to cut today? Do they want me to cut, outreach and engagement to those that are homeless or struggling? How about domestic violence shelters? Is that getting cut today? Does that have to go on the chopping block? Well, damn, does Veterans Village at risk now? We put more veterans on the street? How many families, how many people struggling with addiction are going to continue to be caught up in a lack of an ability for us to step up and do what's right? I very rarely say this about a tax. I don't want to see it cut. I don't want to have to take a haircut right into it as we get going and start running and moving in the right direction and continuing to be visionary and bold in our attempts and a little bit audacious at times, but it's working here in Clackamas. I don't want to throw another county under the bus, but I think a lot of this is we're being unfairly chastised because of the chronic and persistent mismanagement to the north. Washington, Clackamas County are doing a really good job. We do a little bit different than Washington County. I think we do it the best, but I'm really proud of Washington County too. I'm a home team guy. But I'm not going to make any decisions today on cutting anything because I'm going to fight that we cut nothing.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's a lawsuit. I don't know if we have to go to the mat on this and use every single available opportunity we have to fight to continue to do what we're doing. But we do need more sticks and bricks. We do need to make adjustments. We do know a little bit in 3 years about where the holes were, where we can adjust funding. We don't need less funding, but we've projected fairly in what we are tasked with by the voters over the next 10 years to do. And there are things that we can make adjustments to be more effective and more holistic in our approach. But coming down to special interest groups trying to govern elected officials and one chamber in the Portland area trying to throw its weight around, and not being honest about where their success is and what's replicatable. I'm not voting for this today. I'm not voting to move forward any cuts. I'm not cutting any of this. And if Metro doesn't think we're being collaborative, then maybe they can talk to us in front of a judge. I'm not okay with where this is going, and I don't support it.
Thank you. I have some comments too, but I'd like Commissioner Scholl to go first.
Yes, thank you. Well, this is a big topic for sure. You know, in 2020, when this came up to the voters, Washington and Multnomah County passed it. The voters inside the metro taxation boundary that lies inside Clackamas County, they did not vote for it. But when it passed, the expectation was that in in 10 years, which in 2020, that seemed like a long time, and with some estimated $2.5 billion of taxes coming from the supportive housing services measure, that the counties, cities in the metro region would make significant headway in solving the homeless problem, okay? So the expectation was that by 31 December 2030, the situation on the street where in 2020 we saw and continue to see in many places a lot of homeless people, that would be rectified by December 31, 2030. This idea to tell the people that there's going to be a tax cut starting in a year from now or thereabouts for
2026.
10%, for 10%, and then in 2031, a 25% reduction in the tax rate. But it's not a tax cut. This is an extension of taxation that is currently due to end the last day of December 2030 to now a 30-year-long tax. And so it would have to go to the people to be approved. And I would say that the chances of the people approving this is very, very slim. So my concern is that we, Clackamas County, fight to ensure that the current arrangement for disbursement of the supportive housing services dollars remain the same as was arranged in 2020, 2021, and that we continue to be successful in working to solve this homeless problem. Now, the other question I have for you is, if these changes were to happen, if these reductions in our current funding levels happen, what would you say to the people of Clackamas County as the effect on the street with these proposed reductions from Metro? In other words, are people going to see more people living on the side of the road like we saw in 2020, 2021, when we began working to solve this problem? Is there going to be a graphic result that you perceive should the Metro idea occur?
Well, sort of alarmist things aren't in my nature,
Yeah.
Commissioner. But Clackamas County is going to achieve its goal of 1,065 placements in permanent supportive housing this year. That's a tremendous success. Those are folks who have been prioritized based on vulnerability, meaning we're housing the most vulnerable first. The budget allocations we've made sustain their housing. So if we have to cut permanent supportive housing placements, yes, people that we've placed there's a risk that they will lose their housing. Now, what we would try to do, you got really smart staff that are committed to trying to figure things out, and we would try to transition as many people as we could to self-sufficiency and preserve the capacity of this program for the people who are unable to move on. And in fact, we're going to tell you more about that in a couple of weeks on our financial plan. That was actually developmentally what we were going to do with this program anyways, right? Our job was to build the system and then optimize it. And so the next investment we were going to propose to you was investments in move-on programming so that we can increase the rate of attrition and put more people into our system. But now there's a risk we need to increase the rate of attrition so that we can pull down the overall system capacity, not so that we can help people move on. So you'll hear more about that in a couple of weeks, but that's where we were headed developmentally with the next phase of our program.
Okay, well, again, to sum this up, I would like to see the arrangements made in 2020, 2021 for the disbursement of these dollars to remain the same until, because we have 6 years left on the current measure, to remain the same, to give us a chance to be successful, and then when we get towards the end of those 6 years, maybe look at this, but it's premature for Metro to suggest that they want to change the measure that was presented to the people in 2020 at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, I did have some questions for you folks, and one of them is, back when this came up, I did not actively support.
Commissioner, would you mind turning your mic on?
Oh, there we go. I did not, at the time when this was happening, I was under a lot of pressure because, I did not actively support, nor did I actively oppose this measure. But I was clear to the folks that were moving this forward that the likelihood of it passing in our county was low, and they finally realized I was correct with that because it appeared to be very Portland-centric and urban-centric. And one of my real issues with this at the time was because it really did nothing to help the same levels of homelessness and poverty that we're dealing with in, dare I say, the other half of our county. And indeed, at this last meeting I attended, it became clear. I said, well, what's the region? The region for my other colleagues there stops at the urban growth boundary of Metro, which means, colleagues, that the rest of our county, being a food shed, being a rural economy, being a timber economy, small businesses, is not part of their economic driver, and they're not as interested in what happens. Well, I guess they're not interested at all in what we have to do in that area of the county to do services, nor are they interested in the economic viability. One of the drivers of this I picked up on is that the business community is now realizing that we are losing population, significant population. People are moving to Vancouver, they're moving to Idaho. They feel that the business systems in the region, I'm not going to include our urban part of the region in that, really are leaving because of tax issues. And one of the things that they said was, well, we have to do something now because you're going to see a decrease anyway. And I think that's, I have to say, one of the most egregious things I've heard in a very, very long time. I had my doubts about this at the beginning, about it being sustainable. I took a lot of pressure and heat for that. I really hate to say that I could have told you so, but I could have told you so. And I also believe that, and this is my question, I was told at the time that we could not, supplant dollars. In other words, if we got more money for the urban areas, we couldn't necessarily help beef up some of the rest of our county that is not, part of the region. Is that correct? And how did we manage that? Because I think somehow we had to push back to make that happen.
Yeah, so the terms of the IGA, the non-displacement terms, basically say that we have to sustain investments in supportive housing services. So the case that we've made is, yes, we're sustaining our investments, and those investments are now in our rural communities. So I think we took all of our other local, state, and federal funding and the new governor's emergency order funding, and we prioritized that for investments in our rurals. Huge success in our rural communities because of that. So we've been able to thread the needle here. We think we've abided by the terms of the agreement, which is to sustain investments in supportive housing services. We've just shifted our non-SHS resources, many of them, to outside the urban growth boundary.
Okay, thank you for that. That's what I thought we did. So I'm happy for that because it is evident to me that they don't see our county as an entire county. It's just only a part of it, and that has always concerned me. The other comment that was made by one of the nonprofits that are here together was, well, Commissioner Schrader, if you want to run one of these for your entire county. Well, I'd be glad to help you walk doors.
Of course.
And I thought, oh, my stars. I have never, as an elected official, been treated like that at a table with another elected official, another person there who's not an elected official and accountable to the taxpayers. I absolutely walked out of there thinking there is something terribly wrong with who's at the table and who is allowed to speak, and an issue, to me, a main issue of accountability, because as we work with our nonprofit partners, we have to manage their contracts. And this is a nonprofit, I'm certainly not managing any contract that they are supposedly pulling together. So I am very, very worried about this. And I did remind here together that since this was an income tax, that folks from our rural communities who do work within the urban growth boundary are paying that tax, but their dollars are not staying in their local community. Because that was one of the big things when they ran this thing, oh, it's going to stay in the community. Well, I'm glad that we could do what we did. I'm so happy that we could thread that needle. But I do want to make it known to these folks that those folks in our rural communities are also paying for this tax. And you didn't care at the time. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Talking with the chairs of the other two counties, I don't know that they'll be participating in this exercise or not. Catherine Harrington was very appointed the chair of Washington County. She told me earlier in the month they had just attended a ribbon cutting for a 60-unit sheltered transitional housing facility in Beaverton. And she says everybody was so happy about the ribbon cutting. And she says, I had to hand my speech off to another commissioner because I knew that we would no longer have funds to make this work. She says 2 months from now, we have another facility opening up in the city of Hillsborough that's been under construction with the promise that we would be able to provide services and care and housing to the homeless people. That facility in Hillsborough will also not be able to be staffed with what's happening in Washington County. Now, we had a scenario, we had an exercise a month ago or two, I can't remember now. You folks came forward with a possible $10 million cut, okay? You know what? At the time, I was thinking, yeah, we could probably absorb that. We could be careful. We would go ahead with our plans. And I was concerned about the governance model, and I still am. But when you present to us a $22 million to $28 million cut, I think that is untenable. I think that Portland Metro Chamber, in their zeal to lower the tax rate to their businesses, have decided to pick off us. And why aren't they going to the legislature with the huge amount of taxes statewide that's being imposed? And the governor was for this tax reduction. Well, fine, Governor. Why don't you do something with your own people in your own legislature and leave successful programs alone? And I was told, oh, Tootie, don't worry, as they pat me on the head. Clackamas County is doing a wonderful job. We're not after Clackamas County, it's Multnomah County, and it's Portland who are failing, and we're going after them. Well, excuse me. Our border is 10 miles long, it's porous. People don't care where they end up. And homelessness will increase in Clackamas County. Also, I'm concerned about the nonprofit at the governance table here together, when in fact they are taking money and delivering the same service, but yet they are voting. The governance model is totally messed up on this. I have submitted in writing to the president of Metro what's going to work, what's not going to work. She said she adopted it. I don't see where it's being adopted anywhere. For the meeting on December 3rd, I will not present cuts from Clackamas County. This board has sent a letter opening up the process of which Metro must abide by the IGA. We've passed our 30-day, what's it called, Jane, our 30-day
Notice of, basically notice of breach.
Notice of breach. We believe Metro has breached the IGA, notice of breach. We have said we need to sit down, talk, and mediate every time we ask for discussions and talk. Oh, yeah, we'll do that, but then we're met with a new scenario. You will come and tell us our cuts. No, we're not going to do that. I refuse to go that when they are indeed in breach of the IGA and we're moving forward. Possibly, as Commissioner West said, I think it's time we take this to the courts because they have entered into agreements and expect the counties to abide by them, and they're not abiding by anything. So that's what's going to happen. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah. Well, a number of things are running through my head, and that is that I've certainly learned in my 25-plus years or 6 of public service that trust amongst governments is challenging, and trust from the public into their governments is also challenged. And I do not feel that this seems to be unprecedented. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like this in the history of our relationships with Metro, that they would do something like this, not work with us, and not work in good faith. Clearly, trust is at risk because of that, and the public's, in the public's opinion, when they realize what's taking place here, I guess they'll be in the court of public opinion when the facts all get out there. But I do have some questions I don't expect staff to answer, but I do want to get the research done, not answered today, but I do want answers too. I'd like to know how much money Metro is taken from this measure for administrative cost. I want to know how many employees are employed at Metro and really what they're doing. I mean, I'm kind of the belief that perhaps the Metro has staffed something up to or equivalent or excess of our staff who are providing the services, and I'm really wondering what they're doing with and how much money is that. If they can cut something, I think they could start cutting there.
Yeah, the 5% set aside.
Yeah. Well, there's a set aside, and these are all the admin. I think it's both, actually. So I want to get to the bottom of that. Also, I think instead of sending them a cut list, I think we not send them a want list, but a needs list. What are our needs? Our needs are, and that's what I would have shared at the table, had we had the round table, which is another, lack of faith and confidence in the president of Metro when he says, yeah, sure, we'll do it. But not good faith that we haven't had that. But here's what I would share, and this is what we ought to put in the needs list. We need more mental health facilities, staffing, dollars to do it, as well as recovery centers, addiction, and the staff to do that, and the dollars to do that, as well as their support, mutual support, working hand in hand as partners, walking in the state legislature and asking for some statute reform when it comes to civil commitment in a number of areas. Again, state certification and licensure for people that are in the industry, so that it is easier for them to qualify, so we can get more people in the labor pool. But those are needs. Those aren't wants. Those are needs. Those people out there don't want that. They need that. And the fact that 60+% are refusing the services tells me, from us talking to the professionals, is that those two needs there, behavior, mental health, and recovery, are the key issues that are blocking and not making us as successful as we ought to be. And when I say us, I'm talking about the region. But I'm appalled.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it there. I've already said enough.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner West, you're up.
I 1,000% agree with everything that Commissioner Savas just said. Present them with, this is where we've gone, this is where we need to go, this is where the adjustments in that needs list that we have to make. Here's the holes with what has made it difficult to build to get the capital necessary to build out the infrastructure to have a system be more robust and resilient. Talk about the recovery campus, I think, is a big deal. And then I also want to know, are we supposed to lobby here together now? I know they're not an elected body. They're not an elected individual. The voters didn't choose them.
Correct.
But they seem to be treated as if they have some type of authority and accountability to the voters, or are they just a special interest group that benefits off the taxpayer grift and the high administrative bureaucracy out of Metro? So I want to know whose wheels they're greasing that they get to be at the table while they demonize counties and work adversarially with counties that are successful, while they're continue to be allowed at some table as if there's some type of expert or Pumbaa that we should all be looking to. I don't think that they have a moral, ethical reason to be at the table, but they continually are. And if you're together, you're listening, yes, I'm talking about you. So I don't know. I have a problem with Here Together and how they've approached this county, the lies that they have said and propagated about this county specifically and my colleagues before I took this seat, and in a way they seem to be quite difficult to deal with even to this day. I don't understand how you can get the taxpayer dollars and then be given these positions of authority, and your interest is not necessarily to solve the problem, but to perpetuate so you continue to be funded. But then you get a say on how those funds are spent or where they go or what reductions happen. But I guarantee you Here Together isn't looking for a haircut. Looks like Clackamas County is. I want to know what Here Together's haircut is. What they have, are they coming to the table with with a cut list too? I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. So the governance model is a problem.
Thank you for bringing forth the very detailed presentation today. I look forward to their next presentation in 2 weeks for the eventual reality that we'll be facing on the finances and the governance. The governance is extremely bothersome. Okay, thank you. This end of this session, Gary. We're going to take a lunch break, and what time shall we return?
May I first clarify, Chair, so are staff not to present cut scenarios at Metro next week?
I don't think we have any commissioner that wants to do that.
Okay.
So it needs presentation?
We can give them this presentation and tell them how much our money's going out.
Is it all right if I make an observation?
Go ahead.
I think a lot of the dialogue that we've heard here today from all of you fits into the priorities that we wanted to bring to the table, in terms of talking about our needs, talking about like the solutions-oriented approach. No, we're not going to talk about line item program cuts to accommodate these scenarios. What we will do is talk about our needs and the process that we think that we want to help achieve Clackamas County's goals. So I'm sort of putting that out there. I think we, as staff, we've thought a lot about these priorities and how they could show up in these conversations. We're not going to talk about specific line item cuts, but we'll talk to you about how we work together on long-term goals if that's what we're doing.
Okay. So what are you presenting at Metro? This packet?
Yeah, summary of this packet.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that okay,
I don't have a
Commissioner?
problem with that.
If you could add some of the higher level needs as it relates to, I think what we agree on, behavioral health, drug facilities, staffing, monies, the resources to do it, all of that.
Causation.
Yeah.
The causation piece in here for homelessness.
And I know semantics, interpretation, and it's not about the needs of our needs as much as it is the needs of the very people that are suffering on the streets. They are the need here, and those are the people we're trying to serve that are our residents in the county. And I think that has to be crystal clear that's, when we say needs, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay, got it. I would recommend a 20-minute lunch break and come back at 1 p.m. Would that be acceptable?
We can try.
We can try. I have a couple phone calls to make, Gary.
Okay, we'll be on recess for at least 20 to 30 minutes.
All right, thank you. Here we go. Welcome back from our break on recess. We're going to continue the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners issues and updates on November 26, 2024. Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Resuming the issues list, next, review of your board business meeting agenda for tomorrow, Wednesday, November 27th. Due to Thanksgiving, you're meeting one day earlier, which is tomorrow, Wednesday, November 27th at 10 a.m. You'll have all the consent agenda items from today's meeting that you approved or you put forward for your review. If you have any final questions on any of those, let me know today, and we'll answer it for you by 10 a.m. tomorrow. Next, advisory board appointments. Andrew, go ahead.
Madam Chair, the Clackamas Workforce Partnership currently has one member who has reapplied. An interview was not conducted. The recommendation is that Brooke Brownlee be reappointed to a third term ending December 15th, 2027. The Board of County Commissioners could require further recruitment if they see fit. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader.
I would say I know Brooke very well. I know Brooke very well. I know that she is a PGE representative, and she does a great job on there. So I would recommend colleagues reappointing her.
Do I hear a motion?
I move we appoint, the name again, Brooke Brownlee to the Clackamas Workforce Partnership.
Seconded.
Commissioner Schrader has moved we appoint Brooke Brownlee to the Clackamas Workforce Partnership. Commissioner Scholl has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the poll?
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Madam Chair.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Next is a proposal for you to consider, commissioners, on your board rules based on recent discussions County Council and I have heard you have. So County Council Jane Veto has agreed to kick this item off.
Thank you. Before the last recess, well, the board adopted our board rules in September. And before the last recess, a gap was identified in our current board rules, and a commissioner placed this item on the issues agenda. And so today, I've been asked to talk specifically about the gap that was identified. It is at Section 5 of our board rules, notice in the agenda as Section D. It currently reads, "The chair shall establish the agenda for each meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. 2 or more commissioners may place any item on the agenda of a meeting over the objection of the chair." And the gap is with respect to scheduling. There is no time frame there when the chair shall schedule this issue for an upcoming meeting. And so the question today for the board is, would you like my office to draft an additional sentence in Section 5D to the effect of something like, "The item shall be scheduled for a meeting within X days"?
Yeah, so, Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, Jane, I appreciate your solution to that, or Council Veto. So I think that bouncing around the idea of 30 days would be, probably a good starting point. So I would concur. Is there any action necessary today to do that?
I think the action would be you would need a majority of the board to direct my office to draft that language. If that is the board's direction, I do have some clarifying questions around that. First of all, I think the board should discuss if they want this language, if they want the specific time period to be 30 days. And then if it is 30 days or however many days, do you want it to be business days or do you want it to be calendar days?
Okay.
I would say calendar days.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yeah, okay, so I think the idea to change 5D and add the sentence about scheduling the meeting within 30 days or less of the request by 2 commissioners, and that specify that 30 days being 30 calendar days, I think would be adequate. I think that's a reasonable amount of time also.
Well, commissioners, what if there's something else scheduled that other commissioners have put on? Are we going to kick off what has already been scheduled? Because this has come up at, I think I've been very cooperative and generous when we've asked for things to come up in our discussions. I say, Gary, how soon can we get it scheduled? He says, we can do this next week, or let's take a look at the schedule because of other pressing business in the county. I'm not going to support this today, commissioners, but anybody can speak your piece on this.
Yeah, I support the idea, as well as the 30 days, as well as making it 30 calendar days. And so, Council Veto, your suggestion is not to change the ordinance itself, but actually the rules that speak to the ordinance, as I understand, correct?
Board rules.
Okay. colleagues, I move that we direct legal counsel's office to change the suggested board rules to allow for a 30-day timeframe for the an action when two commissioners want to put something on the agenda over the objection of the chair, that they be calendar days. I'll stop there. Did I miss anything?
Commissioner West?
Are we in discussion?
A
No.
motion has been made.
Oh,
We can discuss after a second.
okay. I'll second because I have a discussion comment.
Go ahead.
Is that okay? Thank you. Why specifically 30 days? Like, what's the thought process around the time frame specifically, or is there any reason why we would pick one time frame over another?
Schultz?
Yes, well, the initial concern here was that there be a definite period of time, a limit, because Commissioner Savas has stated in the past that he was concerned that the period of time for something to get on the schedule was too long. So this provides a guideline to future boards that there's an expectation that within 30 days or less of two commissioners wanting to get something on the schedule, that it can be done that way.
Can I ask counsel a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Currently, the way it's written, if two commissioners, even at the objection of the chair, bring forth an item to be put on the agenda, could it be theoretically indefinitely never scheduled because the chair, I am not pointing in no specific chair, this is hypothetical, the chair could continue just to string it along based on the timeline? There's no real ability to actually like put any solid action behind the two commissioners to put something on the agenda?
My understanding of the process is that when something becomes an agenda item, it is placed on what we call the green sheet, and as slots open up, they get moved on there. It is the chair's determination on what has priority, and so that, I think, is the current process.
Could they kick the can forever, technically, if they wanted to?
There's certainly history here of that happening.
But hypothetically, based on how it's written, could that happen?
Hypothetically, based on how it's written, if something is identified as not a high priority, it could not be scheduled immediately.
And currently, only the chair identifies something prioritize and triages those items on the green sheet.
I would say that is true. I would say, though, and there are staff people that attend the meeting with the chair. There is a discussion around items. For example, I attend these meetings. Our county administrator attends these meetings. Policy analyst attends these meetings. So there is a discussion around those items.
Is this historically, Gary or council, a rare occurrence to have to take this effort and measure?
I'll answer. Prior chairs, yes, I've observed, very rarely, not maliciously, but yes, sometimes it happens. It doesn't get scheduled for quite a while, and those two commissioners that asked get frustrated. There also, if I may, there's potential for abuse for what you're about to do, where future commissioners, not this board, could try to undermine the chair by constantly scheduling multiple items over and over and over that will gunk up county business.
So can they schedule the same item over and over again, but once it's been scheduled and heard, can it be considered a closed case because it's been heard and been brought forward? Or could it has to be a separate item and issue? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to have this hamster wheel effect either. I guess, is that that's my other question.
That's not part of this motion or your current board rules where you say once you've made a decision as a board, you can't bring it back, because right now you can. Two commissioners can bring it back a topic over and over and over, if you wish.
Okay. That's the questions I guess I have for now, Chair. I don't know if, I'm processing this.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, so appreciate Commissioner West questions there. To the latter, I would say there's no precedent for that, right? That's never happened. So I don't think we ought to be focusing on a problem that hasn't been presented to us. The problem that we're trying to address here is something that has occurred. It's occurred, you know, I'm not picking on any particular chair, but it has occurred several times with more than one chair. As far as my inclination on the time frame was, I was first thinking about 2 weeks, but also thinking about the reality of being reasonable. Also knowing our schedule, that we have a lot of periods of time where there's nothing on this calendar. So there's a way to fit it in without necessarily taking something off, or the combination of based on priority, but I think 30 days is a reasonable time.
Well, the problem is, Paul, your motion doesn't say that. Your motion says, I mean, we've been in a do loop over board rules. I don't know how many times this has been brought back. So I think once an issue has been come and satisfied, why would you continue to bring it back, just like this issue?
So Andrew, could you read the motion?
Commissioner Savas has moved that he would like to direct council to change the board rules to allow for a 30 calendar day time frame on action for issues agenda if 2 commissioners would like to put something on the issues agenda over the objection of the chair.
So council, does I need to clean that up at all?
That's the way it is now. So
But it's not working. It's not working.
Commissioner Savas, I totally disagree. Any 2 commissioners can come to a meeting today and discuss something, and at a majority of the board to say, yeah, we want to have a policy session. I don't see how this is a change.
Yeah.
Mark?
Okay. May I suggest that the words "over the objection of the chair" be removed from the motion that Andrew just read, because this is not about objections of the chair. This is about any 2 commissioners having an issue that they want on the agenda 30 days from now or less, whether the chair objects or not. So the objection of this is not about overriding the objection of a chair.
It's about 2 commissioners wanting to put something on the agenda.
That's it.
So,
I don't have a problem with that.
the issue with governance, which was brought up several times, Commissioner Scholl, you and I have asked to put that on the agenda. It's been over 2 years.
Right.
Where that has been, and it's never come to fruition. So, in our request, it wasn't about the words over the objection. It was 2 commissioners doing it. So we exercised that. And then we exercised it again. And then it was clear that there was an objection, and it still didn't work. So the ordinance is what, what's the ordinance that speaks to that uses that language?
It's in chapter 2. I don't recall the number
Yeah,
right now.
but if you want to cite the ordinance, you know, and again, if Council Veto wants to craft a more clear motion, I'm happy to withdraw mine and restate.
So, if I may, I think what you would want to do, rather than put this in the middle of the sentence, is have a separate sentence. So the way that it currently reads is 2 or more commissioners may place any item on the agenda of a meeting over the Board of County Commissioners over the objection of the chair. If the board decides to move in this direction, I would recommend adding a new sentence saying that item shall be scheduled at an upcoming meeting within 30 calendar days.
So moved.
Okay. What was that again? Can you reread the motion?
Do we change the motion? I'm confused.
I'm confused on what we're doing, because, first of all, there's a motion.
There's still a motion on the table.
There's a motion on the table. That motion needs to be withdrawn before we have a new motion.
I withdraw my first motion and.
Just a moment. Do we have a second on the withdrawal of the
Yes.
first motion?
A second.
Yeah.
All right, now, will County Council please read the new motion?
The new motion would be to add an additional sentence at the end of section 5D to read as follows. That item shall be scheduled for an upcoming meeting within 30 calendar days.
So moved.
Seconded.
Andrew, would you please read the motion?
County Council will add a sentence to section 5D, that item shall be scheduled within 30 calendar days.
And what is it following? What precedes that?
So it proceeds, Section D reads, "The chair shall establish the agenda for each meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. 2 or more commissioners may place any item on the agenda of a meeting of the Board of County Commissioners over the objection of the chair." And then the new sentence would read, "That item shall be scheduled at an upcoming meeting within 30 business
Okay, we did not.
calendar days."
Identify what meeting that would be. I assume it's issues. We did not identify what meeting that was. I assume it's issues. That's how I would interpret it.
I would say a policy session, because right now, any single commissioner can add an item to issues.
Okay, now that brings a problem for me if it's a policy session. In a policy session, usually we have staff presenting, bringing forth facts and information. Would staff necessarily, or the departments, be able to do it in that timely manner? Because we've had issues with that not being able to happen. So therefore, if it didn't happen, I think that would be used as a weapon to criticize the chair because that person, the chair, didn't do their job on this.
That's not happened.
Oh, it doesn't mean it won't. I've been accused of all kinds of things sitting here, Paul, you know that.
So have I.
I've never accused you.
Not me.
I have a question. I had my light on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Since we have a motion in a second, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question to the motion about how this would play out, once again, about the 30 days. I don't understand how long it takes to reasonably schedule something and how far out we schedule. So is it typical that we're working on a 90-day calendar to get things kind of worked into the schedule? Is it a 30-day? Is it every 2 weeks? I want to have an understanding about how that process works.
Well, Gary, I can answer that question. Since I became chair, we're working on a quarterly calendar. I'm also allowing for commissioners to have their business. So we say, reach out to all the departments, have your stuff in by X days in order to have it be considered, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, mainly so we have certainty in the business that we conduct. Now, as far as I know, there's always been ample room for commissioners to bring their issues too. So my practice has been we schedule what the departments want, and then there's also gaps in the schedule for other things that may come available.
So is it reasonable that, let's say, Commissioner Savas or Commissioner, just because we're the less charged ones here, Commissioner Schrader and I want to bring up a housing issue around homelessness, and we feel like it's a little more pressing, would that be, maybe it's a little controversial, would that be heard reasonably within 30 days, or would the schedule's so tight it needs to be, that's what I'm trying to understand, that if we do bring something forward, what is a reasonable time frame? Is 30 days, that, it doesn't seem unreasonable, but I just want to understand how the process has traditionally worked.
So when you say quarterly, you're scheduling every for 4 months at a time?
Is it 3 or 3 months?
3 months, sorry, yeah. 3 months, 3 times 4.
And the green sheet
Commissioner
sometimes
Schrader,
goes
could I
on.
please have you speak in your microphone, please? Thank you.
So basically, we're scheduling for 3 months at a time.
3 to 4, yes.
3 to 4 months. Why don't we just make it within 4 months then or something? I mean, that's.
That's long.
I know it's long, but I'm like, if you want it to be scheduled at some point, and, you know that the process is we schedule out for every 3 months.
Can I come to
just-
follow to
I
my
don't know.
question?
Yeah, just
Is,
talk.
so let's say 2 commissioners bring it forward, you're the chair, I'm going to address you as if this is really happening. So let's say Martha and I have an issue, we want to come before you, and you're like, hey guys, I know that you guys have the right to do this, but here's the schedule, the green sheet, what do you want me to bump? Can I work with you a little bit? Is there room for that dialogue, or does it need to be like 30 days it's in, and that's reasonable?
There's always
I
room
think
for
that,
dialogue.
I'm just trying to understand, I'm not opposed necessarily to this measure, I just want to understand what we're agreeing to before I totally vote yes or no.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
I have been on this board for a long time, 12 years now, and I've been vice chair 3 times. So I've been part of the agenda setting process. The green sheet is not the agenda. The green sheet is more of a pick list. And as staff wants to choose something on that based on priority or staff preparation, it gets done. So I know of no time where there is actually, can you say there's a agenda 4 months in ahead? Then I want to see the agenda for next week and the next week and next week. The fact is that those agendas aren't drafted. It's not that there are not fixed agendas 2 or 3 weeks forward of today.
I disagree with that, Paul. If you take a look at the green sheet, those items are agendaized on this particular date and time. Correct, Gary?
Yes, may I? So the green sheet, that's the mystery to everyone listening. It's a document that maps out 4 months ahead of all the potentially scheduled policy sessions. Now, because to be fair, you're only seeing a list for the end of this calendar year because there's going to be a new chair. And that chair is going to get to decide going forward in January, February. That's why you've not seen a longer list recently. But go back a few months in your emails, these lists have been 4, 5, 6 months in advance. And the chair and the administrator work together on scheduling. The administrator gives advice to the chair gives advice and direction to the administrator. They work closely together to make it all fit, which means sometimes going back to the board and saying, you're going to work an afternoon session today. Or we're going to pull this other item that's not as urgent. There's a way to work it all out. That's what the role of the chair and the administrator, which happens now.
And there's also all that open time that we have had, at least in the last 3.5, 4 years, where we have wide open Tuesday afternoons frequently, where we have sometimes wide open Wednesdays, or at least afternoons. So there's room that you don't have to bump anything, as I stated earlier. You could just simply carve out an hour here or half an hour, whatever it may be. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I was, in my previous roles on special districts, I was the chair of 2 of those districts. And I did that quite frequently. Actually, I did it in partnership with the entire board. At the end of every meeting, we talked about the next agenda. I made sure that it met their requirements. And if they wanted to add anything to that agenda. And we actually worked on the agenda before we adjourned the meeting. That was a regular practice at every business meeting that I chaired.
Commissioner West?
So if I take this measure at its word, the way that it's drafted and that we're voting on, we already have the rules and it's in the charter that 2 commissioners can bring something forward.
Mm-hmm.
To say, hey, that needs to happen in 30 calendar days, at this point after this conversation seems reasonable to me. It's not a big stretch or leap. I'm going to end up supporting this motion.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Would you please read it again?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Savas, seconded by Commissioner Scholl, has moved that the board directs council to add a sentence to Section 5D of board rules to read, quote, "That item shall be scheduled at an upcoming meeting within 30 calendar days," end quote.
Okay, commissioners, are you ready for a poll?
Oh, yeah.
All right, go for it.
Commissioner Schrader.
Going to abstain.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Madam Chair.
Abstain. Motion passes 3-2-0.
Hallelujah.
All right, what's up next, Gary?
Last item is Commissioner Communications.
Okay, we've had a lot of talk today.
Oh.
Mark, you seem ready.
Okay, well, I just wanted to share a couple of things with you. On the 13th of December is the Association of Oregon and California Counties Board meeting in Salem. Every member county has 3 votes. And so if 2 other commissioners aren't going to be there, I would like to get a letter for a proxy vote from 2 commissioners so I can cast 3 votes on the 13th. Last year, the proxy votes were Chair Smith and Commissioner Schrader. And who would you like to be the proxy votes this year?
Ben can do it, I can do it, I don't care.
Okay, I'll ask Caroline to put together the proxy vote letter for Ben and for Savas. And the other thing I wanted to share with you is last Thursday, we had the 82nd Avenue Transit meeting for the bus rapid transit project on 82nd Avenue. The board made a vote to approve the Cully option for the northern terminus of the 82nd BRT. And that's on Killingsworth and Cully. Street. That was considered to be the optimal termination for the north termination. And so now, TriMet will begin design work on that. And also, they'll begin to work on the design for electric charging stations for these electric buses and for hydrogen charging also. Because some of the buses, TriMet has opted to use hydrogen-powered, hydrogen-fuel buses.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's going on, and I just want you to know that the estimate price tag on that project could be as high as $312 million. So a lot of money. I know a lot of that money is earmarked from federal money that is required to be spent on mass transit projects. So it's not like we can work a deal to move some of that money over to a I-5 improvement or a I-205 improvement project. So that's where that project's at. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an update. Last Thursday, one of the meetings I sat on was on the, basically the Joint Committee on Transportation's 3 work groups. I sit on the Finish What We Started work group. Apparently, the other 2 work groups heard what I heard as well, but there was a presentation by ODOT staff on a number of funding options and, quizzes as to what people thought. But one of those was a more in-depth presentation on the phrase on the slide said, restarting tolling. So I thought I would bring to your attention that that was presented. I don't necessarily say, I can say for certain that that was for certain that there's going to be a restart on tolling, but I just want to make you aware that's that's a topic. The other element to what Commissioner Scholl just raised, TriMet is, I had a conversation with TriMet yesterday morning. One of the things that came up, I didn't expect it to, was this hydrogen. I had a question about the hydrogen buses. And because the funds that are funding that were specifically for the buses and the charging facilities that go with it. And I said, if you're not having the charging facilities on these hydrogen fleet, because the electric buses don't have the same range, so that's why TriMet is shifting to the hydrogen. The response, I thought, was a little odd. And their response was, well, they are electric. They're just powered by hydrogen. I said, well, that's not the point. They're powered by hydrogen, and the drive motor is electric, not unlike a train. I don't know if people know that trains, freight trains in particular, for example, that what drives the wheels is an electric motor. People don't know that. But it's the diesel fuel drives a generator that drives the electric motors. But we call that a diesel locomotive. We don't call it an electric locomotive. So I just thought I'd alert you to that, and it's been a long morning, so I'll conclude there and yield back.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
I just want to mention that last week I was at, I think that Ben, you were there and Gary was there. And Paul, you were there too at the Association of Oregon Counties annual conference. It was an excellent conference. One of the people I got to connect with is George Dunlap. And George Dunlap is the second vice president for the National Association of Counties. And first vice president is J.D. Clark, and James Gore is the current president. And George is from Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, Wise County, Texas, J.D. Clark, Sonoma County, California, James Gore, and the past president is from Ramsey County, Minnesota, Mary Jo McGuire. Had a chance to talk with George in depth about NACO and what his plans are. It's one of the things that those second vice presidents do, is they do try to start traveling around the country to get to know other folks. I will be attending the Large Urban County Caucus / Rural Action Caucus meeting at the very beginning of December in Sonoma County. And it looks like it's going to be a great opportunity to take a look at agriculture, urban, rural issues, which is something I've been highly interested in for all of my time here on the County Commission. So I want to thank Gina, our Executive Director of the AOC. One of the things that has changed drastically, I think, under her leadership is that we have a whole number of sponsors now, everything from Aetna to Comcast to businesses that work directly with county CIS. That's kind of again, a group that does insurance for counties, but a whole number of folks who now have become permanent sponsors of the conference, which has expanded it and given us access to more opportunities to look at what we do and who do we employ, and how do we contract with folks in counties. So I thought it was a great success. Ben, you went too, so I'm sure you can say something about it. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner West, you're up.
I'm going to keep my comments brief because I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to be said this week. So much more. But yeah, AOC was fantastic. It was a wonderful time to collaborate with colleagues across the state. I find a lot of value not only in the Association of Oregon Counties, but also in NACO, the National Association of Counties. And I'm really interested to kind of see how we move forward as a group of counties involving a lot of the timber natural resource issues that are facing us around the corner, especially with the new administration. We've had a lot of issues around our O&C lands, forest management, and different pathways to be more sustainable and productive in those areas. So that was a lot of important conversation going on. And it was also just a great time to kind of, I always enjoy the taste of the counties where we always get to see different parts of the state of Oregon and share that with one another and go around and experience a little bit of every corner of Oregon. So I had a really great time, learned a lot this year. Was a little bit concerned, and I have questions for our tax assessor after a meeting that I had. Commissioner Savas, you know exactly what I'm talking about. One of those meetings really piqued my interest. I want to make sure that we're asking the appropriate questions as we see some ideas and policies coming down the line that may impact taxpayers here in Clackamas County. So
Why don't you bring that forward?
like now,
Well, no.
I have some questions, yeah.
Why don't two commissioners offer to put it on the agenda? And we can discuss it within 30 days. I'm not sure if our tax assessor will be ready in time, but I'm sure I'll be blamed for it if he doesn't show up.
I love you.
Thank you.
So now just some important questions around policy ideas around that. I don't know how comfortable Clackamas County residents are going to be with drones circling their homes to see if grandma put a deck on the backyard and whether or not we should increase their property values. How do we streamline the process? Do we need it to be as expensive to administrate property taxes and the values in the county? Especially with AI and technology. How do we, right size how we do taxes in Oregon so we don't have record revenues, but we seem to always be clawing more and more shilling we can out of every single working family. So there's some big questions that came up from the local level. That's at least one of the meetings that stood out to me. So those were my focuses at AOC, but I'm sure this is not the end of that conversation. And hang on, Clackamas County, it's going to be a bumpy ride for the next few weeks. So I'll just lay that out there.
Up. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not too excited about our tax assessor having drones. Just saying, but you know what? Maybe the next board might think it's a good idea. If they fly too far into rural areas of Clackamas County, they could be shot down. Just saying. That is not uncommon.
That could happen.
I have a very bad cold and my voice is going out, and I apologize for coughing.
Yeah.
I've had it for over a week and it's just been wearing me out, so I'm going to pause on any more of my communications and hold them for tomorrow.
Yeah.
See no further business before this commission. We are adjourned.